Chapter 614, What Happened to the Genius's Paper? Mr. Wu didn't know what to say when he read through exam paper number 1000. The candidate had answered every question fully, but only got 179. The score wasn't even high enough to pass the exam, let alone be ranked among the top 1000. Feng Wu, don't blame me. You're just unlucky. At that thought, Mr. Wu looked around to make sure that no one was paying attention to his corner. Then, he quietly removed Feng Wu's paper from the stack and stashed it in his chest pocket. After that, he changed the 1000 to 10001. The exam papers were registered by serial number, and the actual names of the candidates were irrelevant. Feng Wu didn't know that her paper had been taken away. No one did, except for Mr. Wu. Soon, all the exam papers had been marked. The failures were sealed away while the top 1000 were sent to court for the emperor to look through. The emperor had never requested to see the exam papers before, and it would have been all up to Mr. Zhou. However, this year, His Majesty had sent his personal steward over to pick up the 1000 exam papers. But only Mr. Liu knew about this. The junior teachers such as Mr. Wu didn't have that information. Right now, Mr. Wu was knocking on Mr. Zhu's door with Feng Wu's paper in his pocket. Mr. Zhu frowned, but still let the man in. Mr. Wu hesitated. Mr. Zhu grew impatient. Speak now or get out. Sir, this, Mr. Wu hinted with his eyes. Mr. Zhu was about to kick Mr. Wu out when the latter whispered, Feng Wu. That name was a big taboo in the Zhu family. Go make us some tea. Mr. Zhu instructed his servant. Once the servant was gone, Mr. Wu took the exam paper from his pocket and laid it carefully on Mr. Zhu's table. What's this? Instead of looking at the paper, Mr. Zhu stared at Mr. Wu. Mr. Wu smiled obsequiously. This is Feng Wu's exam paper. Mr. Zhu didn't let his face betray anything. He cast a stern look at Mr. Wu, then picked up the paper. He frowned as soon as he recognized the texture of the paper and the text format. It's Feng Wu's paper for the entrance exam. I happened to come across it when I was correcting the papers, so I took it out, said Mr. Wu in satisfaction. Mr. Zhu stared at the paper. He didn't think much of it at first, but soon, the frown on his face grew bigger. Because it was a perfect, impeccable paper. It was unbelievable. There were no mistakes at all in Section 1. And Section 2. And Section 3. And Section 4. And Section 5. I can't deduct a single point from the answers. Mr. Wu had read through Feng Wu's paper and had tried his best to find some error in her answers, but couldn't. It's perfect. Flawless. Mr. Zhu could do nothing but compliment the answers, and his mouth fell open in amazement. Even he, the deputy principal of Imperial College and a superior cultivator, was astonished by Feng Wu's answers. That was how outstanding her answers were. Such a talented girl, Mr. Zhu then thought of Zhu Qinghuan. For he was none other than Zhu Qinghuan's uncle. Chapter 615, Shocked. The entire Zhu family had put everything they had into training Zhu Qinghuan. Would she be able to do a better job if she was the one answering these questions? Yes. Of course she would. Mr. Zhu clenched his fists and told himself so. However, deep down, a voice was telling him that no, Zhu Qinghuan wouldn't be able to do it. Mr. Zhu was about to put Feng Wu's paper away. When he had the chance, he would deliver it to Zhu Qinghuan. However, he looked up and saw Mr. Wu, who was still here. Right now, Mr. Wu was looking at Mr. Zhu with an ingratiating smile on his face. Mr. Zhu frowned. How did you get it out? Mr. Wu told him how he had removed the paper from the stack, and added in a complacent tone, Sir, please don't worry. Those who failed the exam will only be able to check their results according to their serial numbers. No one will know what name is on the paper. Moreover, His Royal Highness dislikes Feng Wu so much. It will only please him to see Feng Wu out, right? Mr. Wu grinned. Idiot. Mr. Zhu growled. Mr. Wu didn't have all the information, but as one of the bosses of the college, Mr. Zhuo knew that Feng Wu was here with recommendation letters from 3 members of the college. And the 3 people were Mr. Liu, Grand Secretary Feng, and Priest Wu. Mr. Liu was in seclusion and wouldn't be a problem for now. But neither Grand Secretary Feng nor Priest Wu were easy to fool. If either of the two were well acquainted with Feng Wu and decided to get to the bottom of this, they would find out as soon as they checked the actual exam paper. When that happened, Mr. Liu would go to the Emperor and Mr. Zhuo himself would so get fired. At that thought, Mr. Zhuo shook his head. "No, we can't do this." Mr. Wu cried out. "Why not? Feng Wu will definitely get all the attention if we put the paper back. By then, if His Majesty finds her exceptional, and with Miss Qinghuan away. What if His Majesty wants to marry Feng Wu to His Royal Highness?" Mr. Zhuo's stomach lurched. His gaze shifted to the paper on his desk. It was too perfect. The one thing Mr. Zhuo was sure of was that Feng Wu had lost her cultivation ability for good. She would never be able to cultivate again. However, she had managed to find another way around this problem by making great achievements in cultivation theory. Mr. Wu did have a point. Mr. Zhuo took the paper, went into another room, and soon returned with another set, the ink on it still wet. He said coldly, "Take this one back." Mr. Wu saw that it was another exam paper with the serial number 10001. The name was Feng Wu and the handwriting was almost identical to Feng Wu's, but the answers were full of errors. And the essay answers even had a disgruntled tone to them. And it scored 179. Mr. Wu was astonished. That was an amazing replica. "Mr. Zhuo, this is incredible," Mr. Wu said in admiration. "Put it back now. Hurry up." Mr. Zhuo snapped. "Yes, of course." Mr. Wu was an experienced teacher, and with Mr. Zhuo's help, he snuck into the record office without difficulty. Meanwhile, the other 1,000 papers had been sent to the Imperial Palace. Emperor Wu was commenting on the memorials to the throne when his chief eunuch entered and whispered in his ear, "Your Majesty, the exam papers from Imperial College are here." Emperor Wu hadn't cared much about Imperial College's entrance exam before, but this time, after the reminder Grand Secretary Feng gave him, he had to keep an eye on it. Chapter 6:16, Such Beauty. Hence, he had all 1,000 sets of the exam paper brought to him, so that he could look for other promising talents. Upon their delivery, instead of reading the exam papers right away, Emperor Wu sent his steward to fetch Grand Secretary Feng first. The Feng Manor. Feng Wu was chatting with Grand Secretary Feng and trying to steer the topic toward the sale of his residence. "Old master, are you really going to sell this house?" asked Feng Wu. Grand Secretary Feng nodded. "But why?" Feng Wu was bewildered. "I'm sure you're not doing it for the money. Why don't you leave it to your children?" Grand Secretary Feng smiled bitterly. "This manor hasn't always been ours, and we were very lucky to receive it as a gift from a man of noble character. My family has lived here ever since, but after studying it for so many years, I still can't figure out its secret. It's time to hand it over to the next special person." "Study it?" Feng Wu narrowed her eyes. Was it possible that Grand Secretary Feng knew about what was going on under the manor as well? Grand Secretary Feng smiled helplessly. "Yes, there is a big secret buried in this manor, but no one has figured it out yet." After some thought, Grand Secretary Feng sighed again. "According to the mysterious seller, if the Feng clan isn't able to figure out the secret in 100 years, we have to sell the manor to someone else. Otherwise, the whole clan will die out." "I didn't believe it at first," Grand Secretary Feng smiled bitterly. "But my clansmen have been dying in the past few years. My wife, my daughter. I'm the only one left in this family." Grand Secretary Feng's face was full of pain. "If I don't sell the house now, Xian Yi might get involved and could get hurt." Feng Wu was about to say something when hasty footsteps came from outside. Master, we have a visitor from court." Soon, the chief steward was led into the room. He smiled at Grand Secretary Feng. Master Feng, please come with me. His Majesty asked for you. Grand Secretary Feng asked, is it about Imperial College's exam? The chief steward wasn't at liberty to reveal any information, but he still dropped a hint. The papers have just been delivered. Grand Secretary Feng took the hint right away. The chief steward turned around and smiled at Feng Wu. Oh my, may I ask who this beautiful girl is? She looks amazing. Master Feng, is this your granddaughter? Grand Secretary Feng smiled. I wish. Master Wang, you've met this girl before, when she was little. I have. Anyone who served the emperor was anything but mediocre. The chief steward had a very retentive memory and could remember all the faces he had ever seen. However, after searching his memory, he gave Grand Secretary Feng a wry smile. Master Feng, please tell me who the girl is. Grand Secretary Feng smiled as he walked out. Grand Secretary Feng, the chief steward asked again once they were outside. Feng Wu. Feng Wu. Feng Wu. Astonished, the chief steward took a moment to digest the information. As in, that Feng Wu? Yes. That Feng Wu. Grand Secretary Feng gloated. The chief steward sighed with emotion. It's only been 5 years and the girl has become such a beauty. Serving Emperor Wu day in and day out, the chief steward was used to seeing all kinds of beautiful women in the imperial palace. However, none of them could compare with Feng Wu. Who could have known, the chief steward exclaimed. She had just been another pretty little girl 5 years ago. But now, her beauty was unrivaled. Chapter 617, Mingye's paper. But that's understandable, the chief steward then recalled Feng Wu's mother, who was known as the most beautiful woman on this continent. How could her daughter be anything but beautiful? In the imperial palace, Emperor Wu greeted Grand Secretary Feng as soon as he spotted the latter. Here, help me with the exam papers. I want to find some potential talents. Grand Secretary Feng smiled. Your Majesty, Mingye is a candidate this year as well. That was right. Now that the Yu family had claimed its independence and had an empire of their own, that kid had been showing up everywhere in the imperial capital lately. Emperor Wu said, remove the stickers and find me his paper. Soon, Grand Secretary Feng found Mingye's exam paper and presented it to Emperor Wu with both hands. Emperor Wu nodded as he read on. Well, that kid might look like a rogue, but his handwriting is pretty neat. Look, he got none of the memorization questions right. Emperor Wu spoke resignedly and Grand Secretary Feng chuckled. Young master, you just couldn't be bothered to memorize those books. He actually has a very good memory, Grand Secretary Feng said with a smile. Emperor Wu nodded. His mind wasn't on the exam. He wouldn't have gotten such low marks if he had put his mind to it. Shaking his head, Emperor Wu put Mingye's paper aside, then asked, where's the girl's paper? Although he had seen her answers, reading the real exam paper wouldn't feel the same. Grand Secretary Feng and the chief steward had already been looking for Feng Wu's paper while Emperor Wu was reading Mingye's, but they still hadn't found it yet. Hearing Emperor Wu's question, Grand Secretary Feng said in a hurry, one moment, Your Majesty. We'll find it in no time. Emperor Wu went back to Mingye's paper and laughed as he read. Such a silly kid. He didn't take this important exam seriously at all. He had left everything he didn't know blank without even trying to make up an answer. Not only didn't he fill in any of the blanks in section 1, he didn't choose any options for the multiple choice questions either. He couldn't even be bothered to guess. Emperor Wu found the boy so amusing. Meanwhile, Grand Secretary Feng and the chief steward exchanged concerned looks. I've flipped through every page and she's not here. So have I. I didn't see her paper. They looked at each other in bewilderment. Grand Secretary Feng wouldn't give up. Splitting the stack in two, he said, let's take a half each and check them again. There was no way that a candidate like that could have been excluded. She got full marks. With 500 sets of the exam paper each, Grand Secretary Feng and the chief steward quickly ran through the stack. Feng Wu's handwriting was so exceptional that it could be spotted right away. This time, Grand Secretary Feng and the chief steward turned each page more slowly, in order not to miss anything. However, until the last page was turned, it wasn't here. Grand Secretary Feng's face darkened. The chief steward found it odd as well. The chief steward had read the exam paper while standing by the emperor's side when Grand Secretary Feng brought it in earlier. His Majesty and Grand Secretary Feng had lavished the answers with compliments, making Miss Feng Wu sound like a fairy. Emperor Wu had finished enjoying Mingye's paper and prompted, "Quickly, bring me little Feng Wu's paper. I need the refreshment. Xiao Yu's paper is a joke." "Your Majesty," Grand Secretary Feng looked at Emperor Wu strangely. "What?" Emperor Wu raised his head and saw the odd looks on Grand Secretary Feng's and the chief steward's faces. He rose to his feet. "What's wrong?" Chapter 618, How Clever Can That Girl Be? Comment. Grand Secretary Feng couldn't hold back his anger. "Xiao Wu's paper isn't here." "What?" Emperor Wu was shocked. That was impossible. If Grand Secretary Feng was telling the truth and Feng Wu really had written down those answers from memory, she could get nothing but full marks, which would shock the entire empire. The first candidate with full marks in history. The emperor himself had put all the memorials aside just to read her paper, but it wasn't here. How is that possible? Emperor Wu's face darkened. Grand Secretary Feng put the stack he checked in front of Emperor Wu and shook his head. "I've checked every page. Hers isn't here." The chief steward also shook his head when he put down his stack. "There are 1,000 sets here. Xiao Wu couldn't have gotten such a low score." Emperor Wu found it ridiculous. He wouldn't believe it. Hence, the emperor himself began to read each page in turn. The exam papers were put together from the highest mark to the lowest. The one on the very top belonged to a teenager named Ning Chenxi, who scored 250. Such a score would have made him first in the previous year. However, after reading Feng Wu's answers, Emperor Wu found Ning Chenxi's answers nothing special at all. Emperor Wu read each one in turn until he reached the last one, which belonged to Mingye. Mingye hadn't taken the exam seriously. He only scored enough to pass. After searching through everything himself, Emperor Wu realized in astonishment that Feng Wu really wasn't included. There were only two possibilities. One was that Feng Wu did really badly and failed the exam. The other possibility was that someone had tried something behind his back. Emperor Wu wasn't happy with either option. More than one senior eunuch served Emperor Wu. Aside from the chief steward, there was also a master Bai. And he said in an unhurried tone, "Is it possible that Miss Feng Wu didn't do a great job?" Grand Secretary Feng flared up. He cast a stern look at Master Bai. "Master Bai, what are you trying to say? Are you accusing me of lying?" Grand Secretary Feng, please don't be mad. "I didn't mean that," Master Bai smiled and remained unperturbed. "It's just that at your age, maybe you don't remember things as clearly as you did before." "Ha, you might as well call me a dotard." Grand Secretary Feng smirked. Luckily, Feng Wu had stuffed some papers in his pocket before he left for the imperial palace, or he would have had no proof now. Grand Secretary Feng's stomach lurched when he remembered that. Had the girl given him her previous exam papers because she had anticipated this? But how? Was it because he had told her that Mr. Liu had gone into seclusion and Mr. Zhuo was the acting principal at the moment? Exactly how clear-minded was this girl, to be able to have such forethought? Meanwhile, Emperor Wu was staring at Grand Secretary Feng and he was getting suspicious. Master Bai tried to aggravate that suspicion. "Grand Secretary Feng, it's only common sense that Miss Feng Wu can't be that perfect. Did you dream everything up?" Emperor Wu found Grand Secretary Feng even more dubious. For he trusted Master Bai a lot. And Grand Secretary Feng's retirement actually had a lot to do with Master Bai. Therefore, Chapter 619, Feng Wu failed. Neither enjoyed the other party's presence. Grand Secretary Feng stared at Master Bai. What if I can give you proof? I'm all ears, then. I'm very curious myself about what kind of wonderful young woman Miss Feng Wu has turned into. Your Majesty, I'm very doubtful on this point. Master Bai smiled. Grand Secretary Feng snorted, took out a stack of exam papers, and put it on Emperor Wu's table. Your Majesty, please have a look. What are these? Emperor Wu narrowed his eyes. Grand Secretary Feng said, this is Feng Wu's first go at the exam paper 7 days ago. Emperor Wu picked up the first one, which had the same handwriting as the one Grand Secretary Feng showed him earlier. However, quite a few marks had been deducted. She only got a little over 200. Emperor Wu frowned. Yes. Your Majesty, please turn to the next page, Grand Secretary Feng said with a smile. I've been giving Xiao Wu an exam paper every day, and she made unbelievable progress. Emperor Wu checked the second exam paper and saw that Feng Wu scored 230. The third set, 240. The fourth set, 250. And she scored 290 in the ninth set. Emperor Wu looked at Grand Secretary Feng in bewilderment. This is. Her speed of progress is marvelous, isn't it? Grand Secretary Feng sighed with emotion. In those 7 days, Xiao Wu memorized all 1,000 books from the must-read list and read 10,000 extracurricular books. That's why she was able to do better in each paper and at such an amazing speed. Emperor Wu was rendered speechless. I don't buy it. Master Bai's voice dripped with acid. No one can memorize that much in 7 days, normal people wouldn't even be able to finish turning all those pages. Grand Secretary Feng, you're just exaggerating. Grand Secretary Feng really wanted to kick Master Bai's ass now. He smirked. Speak for yourself. What do you know about Xiao Wu? Why do you think she was able to get full marks? Well, we don't know how reliable that claim is yet, Master Bai said sarcastically. Emperor Wu frowned. He had to get to the bottom of this. Grand Secretary Feng threw a dirty look at Master Bai, then turned to Emperor Wu. Your Majesty, may I go to Imperial College now to fetch Xiao Wu's exam paper? Emperor Wu nodded. Master Bai, go with Grand Secretary Feng. Yes, Your Majesty. Master Bai then went to Imperial College with Grand Secretary Feng. At the same time, the list of the top 1,000 candidates had already started to get around. After all, His Majesty had seen the exam papers already. The information was leaked. The Feng clan. What? I got in. Feng Lu, who was bedridden with a bad cold, jumped to her feet and was overwhelmed with excitement. I'm in. I passed the written exam. Ha ha ha. I really did. Yes, Miss Lu. Kaiyue, Feng Lu's chambermaid, whispered in her ear, Miss, the list is for sale already and it's really expensive. Young Master Feng bought a copy with 100 bronze coins. Show me. I want to see it. Thrilled, Feng Lu snatched the list out of Kaiyue's hand. She began to look for her name from the top down. And she finally found it at the bottom of the list. Ha ha ha. I'm the 1,000th. Feng Lu was elated. Didn't Feng Wu take the exam as well? Is she in? Chapter 620, Xiao Wu must have full marks. When it came to Feng Wu, Feng Lu was in fact intimidated by this sister of hers despite her apparent contempt. That was something that had been ingrained into her when she was little. Feng Lu quickly went through the names. Feng Wu wasn't on the first page. Or the second page. Or the third. She read all the way down to the 10th page. And the 999th name was Mingye. Is this list the real deal? Because of the cold, Feng Lu didn't feel very well. However, she jumped out of bed after looking through the list and grabbed Kaiyue in excitement. Is it real? Is it? The young master brought it back himself. It has to be. Ha ha ha, ha 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 ha. Feng Lu was so excited that she looked insane. She was crying and laughing at the same time. Even Lady Wang heard the noise and came in a hurry to check up on Feng Lu. Mother, ha ha ha, look at this list. Feng Lu said in an agitated tone. Look! The list is out. Lady Wang took the list and began to look through the names. Her eyes lit up when she reached the bottom. Xiao Lu, you're the 1000th. That was enough to get Feng Lu into one of the finest classes in Imperial College, where she would be able to enjoy a lot of resources. Mother, I still have to get through the physical tryout. Feng Lu sounded very pleased. Wait a minute. Lady Wang cried out in surprise. Feng Wu isn't here. Lady Wang thought the same as Feng Lu. No matter how much contempt they displayed toward Feng Wu, they were secretly on guard against her, for she had been simply too talented before. That was until they read that list. Lady Wang and Feng Lu let out breaths of relief in unison. The weather is really nice today. Do you want to take a walk? Lady Wang proposed. Of course. Feng Lu said in excitement. And naturally, they headed for Feng Wu's Fallen Star Yard. In Fallen Star Yard. Feng Wu's beautiful mother was sewing an exquisite dress in the courtyard. Xiao Wu is going to college soon and I'll make sure she has the prettiest dress. The beautiful lady was embroidering a pink flower on the sleeve as she chatted with Granny Zhao, who was busy with household chores. Granny Zhao nodded with a smile. Miss Wu is brilliant. I'm sure she'll do great. Feng Xiaoqi, who was chewing on a pancake, grinned. My sister is the best. She'll get nothing but the highest score. Chaoga added in excitement, the highest? Xiao Wu will get full marks. I'm sure of it. Uncle Chiu, who was cultivating on the side, gave them a wry smile. Each one of them had higher hopes than the last. Luckily, Miss Wu was worth all that expectation. Everyone was home except for Feng Wu. While they were enjoying themselves in the yard. Lady Wang and Feng Lu arrived with a bunch of servants. Despite Fallen Star Yard's high wall, they heard everything inside. Feng Lu almost burst out laughing when she heard the conversation. Ha ha ha, ha 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 ha. Feng Lu couldn't wait to see their disappointed faces. Open up. Open up now. Feng Lu banged on the door, puffed up with arrogance. Who is it? Granny Zhao was washing some clothes. She feared that the clothes might be tampered with if they were washed by someone else, so she had always done the work herself. Granny Zhao rose to her feet, dried her hands on her apron, and went to answer the door. Chapter 621, Full Marks. The first. Miss Lu. Granny Zhao stiffened when she saw Feng Lu. When she spotted Lady Wang behind Feng Lu, she wanted to stop them at the gate. However, Feng Lu didn't give her that chance. Feng Lu gave it a shove and Granny Zhao stumbled back. Instantly, everyone inside the yard turned to look in that direction. Feng Lu. Duan Chaoga was the first to stand up and glare at Feng Lu. Feng Xiaoqi and the others rose to their feet as well and were all alarmed, as if enemies had just stepped into their home. Oh my, is everything all right? Calm down, do calm down. We're all family here. Now, please take a seat and let's chat. Lady Wang smiled. She decided that she was going to get back at these people for everything they had put her through outside Imperial College before the exam started. Hence, she asked everyone to sit back down. Kindness doesn't suit you. Shielding the beautiful lady with her own body, Chaoga glared at Feng Lu and Lady Wang. You're not welcome here. Get lost now. You'll be in so much trouble when Xiao Wu gets back. Chaoga knew that Feng Wu's top priority was to keep her mother safe. Hence, she had to protect the beautiful lady from all harm. Oh my, I was wondering who that voice belonged to. So, it's you, Duan Chaoga. Duan. Chao. Go. Aren't you from the Duan family? Who are you to point your finger around in my home? Who gave you the right? Go back to your own home now. Feng Lu said in a harsh tone. Anyone else would have been so abashed by now, but not Xiao. She shoved Feng Lu with rage. Who am I? I'm much closer to Xiao Wu than you are. Who the hell are you to say those things to me? You! Feng Lu was furious. To make it worse, Feng Xiaoqi stepped out and glared at Feng Lu. You're not welcome here. Go away. Feng Lu was so mad she thought that she was going to lose her mind. Read more chapter on VIP novel. Calm, however, she smirked all of a sudden. Feng Xiaoqi, what makes you think you can be so arrogant? Do you really think your sister will be going to Imperial College? In her dreams. To Feng Xiaoqi, his sister was the best and no one was allowed to say otherwise. He could live with Feng Lu insulting him, but he wouldn't let the woman say anything bad about his sister. Feng Xiaoqi exploded right away. My sister isn't going to Imperial College? Ha! I'm telling you, not only will my sister be going to Imperial College, she's going to get in as the top student. Duan Chaoga rested her hands on her waist. And she's going to get full marks as well. Exchanging looks with Lady Wang, Feng Lu couldn't control herself anymore. Ha 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 ha, oh god, ha 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 ha. Seeing that Feng Lu was cracking up, Feng Xiaoqi was infuriated. Stop laughing. It was as if they had told her a joke. Ha ha ha, the top student. Full marks. Ha 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 ha, Feng Lu laughed so hard that she could barely stand still. That's just so funny, ha 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 ha. Feng Xiaoqi flared up. Get out. Get out now. Ha ha ha, Feng Lu laughed until she was in tears. She took the unannounced list from her chest pocket and tossed it at Feng Xiaoqi. Here's the list that's been going around. Try to find your sister's name on it. Feng Xiaoqi didn't want to do as told, but he was too curious. In the end, he slowly unfolded it. Chapter 622, Splendid. Feng Xiaoqi read the list from the first name to the last and his face darkened. What's wrong? Seeing the look on Xiaoqi's face, Chaoga went up to him. And she was surprised by the list as well. Where's Xiao Wu? Chaoga almost jumped to her feet. Why isn't Xiao Wu on it? Feng Lu guffawed. Why should her name be there? She was never going to get in. Bullshit. Chaoga was furious. There's no way that Xiao Wu failed. But she's just not on the list. Feng Lu shrugged smugly. With a tearing sound, Chaoga ripped the list in half. It's fake. Feng Lu went wild. How dare you tear it up? I'm gonna kill you. At those words, Feng Lu raised a hand and tried to slap Chaoga. Chaoga smirked. I'd like to see you try. Chaoga was as capable as Feng Lu now, if not better. Grabbing Feng Lu by the wrist, Chaoga was going to throw Feng Lu out. Lady Wang wouldn't let that happen. With a wave of her hand, all her servants rushed at Chaoga. Feng Xiaoqi realized that they would soon be outnumbered. An idea then struck him. Grabbing Chaoga, they backed away onto the stairs. What happened next was quicker than words could describe. Feng Xiaoqi smashed a glass bottle in a corner to pieces. His sister told him that she had set up a protective formation in this courtyard and that the glass bottle was the trigger. At the smashing sound, Feng Lu saw the clear blue sky suddenly turn overcast as dark clouds began to gather. The even ground became a swamp under her feet. Not only herself, everyone else in the courtyard seemed to be surrounded by the swamp. Ah! Feng Lu screamed all of a sudden. I'm sinking. Ah! There's so much mud. Help me. Help. As a matter of fact, from Feng Xiaoqi's point of view, Feng Lu was standing in a shallow pit about 5 centimeters deep. Lady Wang looked equally flustered. She tried her best to reach for Feng Lu, but they seemed to be worlds apart. Exasperated, Lady Wang waved her arms and cried out, Xiao Lu. Hang on. I'm coming for you. To Feng Xiaoqi, the two of them were only a meter away from each other. Feng Xiaoqi didn't know what to say. Xiao was rendered speechless. And the rest of Feng Wu's family was speechless as well. This was amazing. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. In their eyes, all these people were making painful faces and struggling like ducks in a thunderstorm when nothing was actually happening to them. However, Feng Lu and Lady Wang were experiencing something completely different. They really thought that they were in a thunderstorm. The sky was dark, lightning was flashing overhead, and they were being pulled down into the swamp. The sticky mud had risen to their thighs, stomachs, chests. "Mom! Help me! Help me, Mom! I'm sinking! Help! Hang on! I'm coming! I'm going to swim across the river and help you." While Feng Lu and Lady Wang were crying their eyes out, Xiao and the others stared at the so-called river between the mother and daughter. There was no such river. The only thing between them was a piece of straw that Granny Zhao had missed when she swept the floor that morning. And the rest of Feng Wu's family was speechless as well. Chapter 623, Where are you on the list? That was so frightening. Chills ran down their spines. They couldn't imagine what kind of doomsday Feng Lu and her people were experiencing in a mere courtyard. Moreover, judging by the frightened looks on their faces, the cold sweat rolling down their foreheads, and their stiff bodies, they weren't acting. They really were living in a nightmare. What a formidable formation. Xiao and the others involuntarily took another step back. "Mom, it hurts. I've been struck by lightning." Sob. Feng Lu was so scared that her face had drained of all color. Her pain looked genuine. "Ah! My head! My hands! Ah! I'm burning! I'm on fire! Stop it! I didn't do anything wrong. I have a clear conscience." Sob. "I didn't mean to do harm to Feng Wu back then." "Stop it. I did mean it. I did it to Feng Wu on purpose. She was too talented. I was jealous. Stop it. Mom! Help! Ah!" Feng Lu screamed as excruciating pain flashed through her head. She jolted and fell backward. The wind and the rain stopped altogether. When Feng Lu came back to herself, she saw that nothing was out of place. The ground was flat, the courtyard was quiet, and the parasol tree stood tall. Feng Xiaoqi and the others were looking at her in amazement, then a face came into view. Feng Wu. Feng Lu cringed involuntarily at the sight of Feng Wu. She had yet to recover from what she had just experienced. The flashing lightning, rumbling thunder, and the dark swamp. She had been burnt to a crisp by the thunderstrike, but now Feng Lu looked down. Her dress was spotless. There was no sign of any such strike. So nothing actually happened. Head spinning, Feng Lu felt a chill run down her spine. If that was just an illusion. That was so frightening. Taking Lady Wang's hand, Feng Lu turned to leave. "Stop!" Feng Wu's cold voice rang out behind her. What do you want?" Feng Lu's clothes were soaked with cold sweat and her face had drained of all color. She stared at Feng Wu. "Do you think you can just come and go like you own the place?" Feng Wu snorted. What on earth do you want from me?" Feng Lu stumbled back. That nightmare had come so suddenly and was so terrifying that Feng Lu was overwhelmed by her fear of Feng Wu. All she could think of now was to get away from here at once and never return. "Sister, she said you didn't get into Imperial College." Feng Xiaoqi picked the right time to tell on Feng Lu. "Did she?" Feng Wu smiled. Feng Xiaoqi rushed over to pick up the list that had been ripped apart by Xiao, then handed it to Feng Wu. "Here, sister. She brought this and told us that the results were out." Mum was so upset that she almost cried. Feng Wu cast a stern look at Feng Lu. She almost made her beautiful mother cry. "You brought this?" Feng Wu slowly went up to Feng Lu. Feng Lu stubbornly stuck out her chest. "I did. She cheered up when she recalled the results on the list. Feng Wu, you know what? You didn't get into the first 1,000. So, game over for you. Really? Where are you on that list, then? Feng Wu asked in an unhurried tone. Chapter 624, Sorry. I'm the 1,000th. I just made it in. Ha 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 ha, resting her hands on her waist, Feng Lu gloated. So, you're last on the list. Feng Wu said in resignation. But you didn't even get in, ha 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 ha. Feng Lu darted a contemptuous look at Feng Wu. At least I can proceed to the physical tryout and you can't. Feng Wu glanced at the list. You learned that from this list? Yes. Feng Lu was very pleased. I don't believe it. Ha, Feng Lu smirked. Feng Wu then said, who knows where you got that list from? Why don't you believe it? Why? My brother got it from Imperial College. Feng Lu stuck her nose in the air. I see, Feng Wu said with a drawl. So, this list was announced before the results are out? The look on Feng Lu's face changed a little. Feng Wu snorted. I'd like to confirm the authenticity of this list. And what if it's real? Feng Lu began to panic. Feng Wu was able to get recommendation letters from 3 bosses, which meant that she did have some connections up there. If it's real, I'll find out who leaked the information. Feng Wu took the list and headed for the gate. No! Feng Lu really panicked now. She clung to Feng Wu and wouldn't let go. You're not going anywhere. Stop. Feng Wu said proudly, I'm going to Imperial College now. I'd like to know if this list is real and who's spreading it. You're not going. Feng Lu worried that Feng Yiran would be incriminated when someone looked into the matter. Are you threatening me now? Feng Wu smirked. Feng Lu was about to say something threatening when she met Feng Wu's sharp, cold gaze. The scene from earlier came back to her instantly and she broke into a cold sweat. Apologize. Feng Wu stared at her. Apologize to my family, now. Lady Wang and Feng Lu looked at each other awkwardly. They had come here to scoff at Feng Wu and have a good laugh. But they had to apologize now. No. Then, Feng Wu repeated her intention to go ask around at Imperial College. In the end, Feng Lu mumbled with a long face, sorry. Can't hear it. Sorry. Can't hear it. I said I'm sorry. Can't hear it. Feng Wu, you're doing this on purpose, aren't you? You're making fun of me. And you just figured that out? Feng Wu sneered at Feng Lu. At the same time, Grand Secretary Feng and Master Bai arrived at Imperial College. Since Mr. Lu was in seclusion, Mr. Zhua, the deputy principal, came out to greet them. Looking from Grand Secretary Feng to Master Bai, Mr. Zhua was confused. May I ask to what do I owe this pleasure? Before Master Bai said anything, Grand Secretary Feng spoke. Let's go to the record office first. The record office? Mr. Zhua raised an eyebrow and had a bad feeling about this. However, it shouldn't be what he was thinking. Wu was supposed to be the only one who knew about Feng Wu's paper. Why should anyone else ask about it? Bemused, Mr. Zhua decided to wait and see how things went. He tipped Master Bai a wink as they walked. After all the money the Zhua family had been giving to Master Bai, the latter would be willing to provide him some information. As expected, Master Bai mouthed a name, Feng Wu. That confirmed Mr. Zhua's speculation. It was indeed about Feng Wu. Luckily, he was prepared and they could look all they wanted. Chapter 625, Is this Miss Feng Wu's paper? Without further ado, Grand Secretary Feng gave his instruction. Find me Feng Wu's exam paper, serial number 10001. The teacher in the record office gave Mr. Zhua a pleading look. Mr. Zhua frowned. Grand Secretary Feng, what are you doing? It's very inappropriate to investigate a candidate's paper in private like this. Mr. Zhuo, Master Bai is here. Do you think it's still private? Grand Secretary Feng smirked. Mr. Zhuo was speechless. Master Bai smiled. Mr. Zhuo, we're here on behalf of His Majesty. Go ahead. Of course, I'll do as told when the order comes from His Majesty. Mr. Zhuo said with a smile, and he remained where he was. He had an excellent ability to mimic someone else's handwriting, and he was very confident about the paper he had written himself. He was sure that there wouldn't be any problems. Soon, the teacher found Feng Wu's paper. He then handed it to Grand Secretary Feng. With the paper in hand, Grand Secretary Feng let out a breath of relief. This is Miss Feng Wu's paper, right? With his hands behind his back, Mr. Zhuo smiled at Grand Secretary Feng. Master Bai looked at Grand Secretary Feng as well. You taught Miss Feng Wu yourself. I'm sure you can recognize her handwriting. Grand Secretary Feng nodded. That's right. This is. He stopped abruptly and frowned. This wasn't right. One look at the paper and Grand Secretary Feng knew something was off. Feng Wu's paper was perfect. She got everything right. However, there were mistakes in this paper from the third question onward. The fifth question was wrong, and then there were many more wrong answers. Some simple memorization questions were incorrect, which was unacceptable. This is ridiculous. Grand Secretary Feng tossed the paper on the table. There's no way that this is Feng Wu's paper. He had seen through the scam. Mr. Zhuo panicked a little, but covered it up soon enough. What's wrong? Mr. Zhuo feigned an innocent voice. Look at the serial number and the name. It's Feng Wu's, isn't it? Master Bai also glanced at Grand Secretary Feng. And the handwriting is identical to that paper you brought in earlier. Mr. Zhuo smirked. Grand Secretary Feng, this is too big a matter for you to say whatever you want. His tone was already intimidating. It would do everyone good to just leave it as it was. However, Grand Secretary Feng cherished all talented people, especially someone as exceptional as Feng Wu. He wouldn't be fooled like this. Grand Secretary Feng snorted. Mr. Zhuo, you can't turn white into black and black into white. If His Majesty discovers malpractice in the exam and the exam papers were switched, well, I hope you can live with the consequences. Face dark, Mr. Zhuo said, Grand Secretary Feng, I see you've set your mind on smearing the reputation of Imperial College. May I remind you that you're a member of the Education Board as well? You won't be better off if the college is affected. Smear its reputation. I'll show you who's the real culprit of that. Grand Secretary Feng stormed off with the paper. Narrowing his eyes, Master Bai gave Mr. Zhuo a look. Mr. Zhuo nodded back confidently, indicating that he was sure of his win. Master Bai gave him a nod, then left with Grand Secretary Feng. In the Imperial Palace, Emperor Wu was looking at a pile of exam papers with a big frown. Chapter 626, Here Comes His Royal Highness. Emperor Wu didn't care about any exam paper other than the set Grand Secretary Feng brought him. As for Feng Wu, Emperor Wu had mixed feelings at the moment. What happened to the girl's exam paper? He was still trying to figure it out when the chief steward whispered in his ear. Your Majesty, His Royal Highness is here. Jun Linyuan. At this hour? Emperor Wu was bemused. Show him in. Jun Linyuan stepped into the hall to find the table covered with exam papers. Linyuan, what brings you here? Emperor Wu knew his son too well to wait for the latter to greet him first. Jun Linyuan gave Emperor Wu a nod, then glanced at the table. These are the exam papers for Imperial College this year. Emperor Wu patted the seat next to him, gesturing at his son to sit down. The chief steward smiled awkwardly as he observed how the emperor behaved around his son. When the crown prince was around, the emperor reminded one of a mouse facing a cat and didn't dare to step out of line at all. Whereas with his other sons, His Majesty was all stately and authoritative. He just couldn't behave like a proper emperor in Jun Linyuan's presence. He tried to establish his authority a few times when Jun Linyuan was little, but each time, he was defeated by the crown prince's relentless comments and blatant disregard. After a few failed attempts, His Majesty gave up ever trying to intimidate His Royal Highness. Emperor Wu jumped a little when Jun Linyuan sat down next to him. He really did sit as told? Something big must have happened. The kid never showed up here without a good reason. Emperor Wu told the chief steward, "Put away these exam papers. They're in the way." He then turned to Jun Linyuan. "Well, to what do I owe this pleasure?" Jun Linyuan kept his gaze on the exam papers that the chief steward tried to gather into a stack. He spotted the one with Feng Wu's handwriting on it right away. "Well, Imperial College had their entrance exam the other day and I had the exam papers of the top 1,000 candidates brought here. You wouldn't be interested, would you? No one here is exceptional enough to be mentioned." Emperor Wu put away Feng Wu's paper as he spoke and put it on his other side away from Jun Linyuan. He knew that Jun Linyuan didn't like to see Feng Wu's name or to be mentioned alongside the girl. Hence, Emperor Wu put away Feng Wu's mock exam papers as well. Jun Linyuan narrowed his eyes, giving off a dangerous air. After some thought, Emperor Wu moved Feng Wu's papers further away from Jun Linyuan. Jun Linyuan was speechless. "Look at these," Emperor Wu waved at Jun Linyuan. "Imperial College is going to have some new talented people once more. No one actually stands out, but quite a few are pretty impressive." "No one stood out?" Jun Linyuan frowned at those words. Emperor Wu thought that Jun Linyuan wouldn't be bothered to look at the exam papers at all. However, to his surprise, Jun Linyuan began to go through the stack one page at a time, starting from the one with the highest marks. And his face darkened as he turned the pages. Emperor Wu was bewildered. What was wrong with the kid? Why did he look disappointed? Is this everything? The look on Jun Linyuan's face was so grim that he looked like he was ready to bite someone. No wonder the officials said that His Royal Highness was more intimidating than His Majesty. Right now, even Emperor Wu couldn't withstand Jun Linyuan's intense gaze. "Yes. I think so." Emperor Wu nodded. "You think?" Jun Linyuan smirked. "What's over there?" "Well, this," Emperor Wu brushed everything under the table. "It's nothing official, ha ha ha." Chapter 627, A Word of Praise for Feng Wu. However, Jun Linyuan reached out with his long arms before Emperor Wu could finish his sentence. Emperor Wu's heart sank. Oh no. Jun Linyuan abhorred Feng Wu and he would explode when he saw her name. As expected, the look on Jun Linyuan's face changed when he picked up the stack of papers and saw the name on them. Emperor Wu was rendered speechless. Shit. The kid was going to have a tantrum. However, to Emperor Wu's surprise, Jun Linyuan didn't flare up right away, despite his livid face. Instead, he read the answers carefully and looked through the stack page by page. Emperor Wu forced a smile. "Oh my, it's not worth reading at all. Here, take these away." The chief steward only took one step forward when Jun Linyuan stopped him with a wave of his right hand. The chief steward paused, smiled bitterly, and gave Emperor Wu an awkward look. Emperor Wu was rendered speechless. He could only gesture at the chief steward to stay put. Jun Linyuan said unhurriedly, "These exam papers." Emperor Wu decided that he shouldn't compliment the girl, or the kid would pick on her later. Xiao Wu was innocent. Emperor Wu forced a smile. "Well, she's alright, I guess." Ha ha ha. Jun Linyuan darted a look at Emperor Wu. "Alright?" "Yes. Look, she only got 210. There's nothing special about her paper. Just put it away." Jun Linyuan turned the page, revealing the second exam set. 220. The next set scored 230. And he turned the pages until the last one, which scored 290. Jun Linyuan glanced at Emperor Wu and casually said, "She's alright, you guess?" Emperor Wu coughed. You brat. I only said that to please you. I wouldn't have belittled Xiao Wu if it wasn't for you. Feng Wu. Picking up the exam paper with 290 points, Jun Linyuan darted a look at the name, then turned to Emperor Wu. Who's she? Had he forgotten about her? He didn't know who little Feng Wu was. Emperor Wu was elated and waved his hands. She's nobody. Not worth remembering at all. Jun Linyuan said, as in the fifth daughter of the Feng clan. So, you knew all along. Emperor Wu looked at Jun Linyuan in resignation. Yes. Jun Linyuan feigned an indifferent tone. Why is her paper here? Emperor Wu knew that he couldn't keep it from his son. The brat could find out on his own anyway. Grand Secretary Feng brought it to me. Jun Linyuan nodded, as if he couldn't give a damn. She did pretty well. Pretty well. Emperor Wu darted a look at Jun Linyuan in surprise. Less than a handful of people could get such a positive comment from Jun Linyuan. Seeing that Jun Linyuan wasn't mad, Emperor Wu stopped trying to hide his appreciation for Feng Wu. Ha ha ha, she really is pretty good. That handwriting alone is so pleasing to the eye. Emperor Wu grinned. And look at these exam papers. Emperor Wu explained in a proud tone, according to Grand Secretary Feng, Xiao Wu did the first set 7 days ago and the last set was done a day before the entrance exam. She improved from 210 to 290 in 7 days. How amazing is that? Jun Linyuan darted a glance at Emperor Wu and looked pleased. Of course she was amazing. She was his girl. However, he only cleared his throat and said indifferently, fine. Chapter 628, Messing with My Xiao Wu? Emperor Wu had started saying good things about Feng Wu and he wasn't going to stop there. Look at these answers. It's no surprise that she can get all the memorization questions right, but look at her answer for section 4. Emperor Wu couldn't suppress the amazement in his voice. See? How innovative. How smart. One look and you know she's so well versed. What a rare talent. Jun Linyuan snorted a little. He had known that all along. However, Jun Linyuan asked, was she absent from the entrance exam? No, she wasn't. Where's her paper, then? Jun Linyuan gave Emperor Wu a sidelong glance. Emperor Wu said, well, about that. She failed. Jun Linyuan gave him a half-smile. Emperor Wu was rendered speechless. Your Majesty, you're not doing a good job as Emperor, you know. Jun Linyuan said sarcastically. Someone was trying to mess with his little Feng Wu. Interesting. Little Feng Wu was his to pick on and his alone. Anyone else who tried to do that could go to hell. Emperor Wu couldn't stand Jun Linyuan's sneer and smacked the table hard. This is unacceptable. How can such a talented person be excluded? These people are so untrustworthy. Where? I'll go get it. Jun Linyuan rose to his feet and his eyes glinted coldly. How dare they do this to his girl? They had to have a death wish. Just then, footsteps came from outside. The chief steward entered the hall. Your Majesty, Your Royal Highness, Master Bai and Grand Secretary Feng are back. Emperor Wu said to Jun Linyuan, I sent them to Imperial College to look into this, I'm sure they're back with Xiao Wu's paper. However, Grand Secretary Feng looked furious when he walked in. Emperor Wu frowned. What's wrong? Master Bai smiled bitterly. Your Majesty, Mr. Zhua showed us to the record office himself and found us Miss Feng Wu's paper. However, Grand Secretary Feng doesn't seem pleased. Not pleased? Emperor Wu looked at Grand Secretary Feng, bewildered. Grand Secretary Feng didn't say a word and only showed Emperor Wu the paper. Picking up the paper, Emperor Wu said, why, this is Xiao Wu's paper. Look at that handwriting. Those strokes. They're so pretty. However, Emperor Wu frowned as he began to read the answers, for there were so many red crosses on the paper that it looked so shocking. So many errors? That's not possible. Emperor Wu cried out in surprise. Jun Linyuan frowned and snatched the paper from Emperor Wu's hands. He only took one look before tossing it back on the table. He snorted. This isn't her paper. Are you sure? Emperor Wu frowned. Jun Linyuan sneered. They only mimicked her handwriting, but not its spirit. Such a rough replica is just a joke. Luckily, Feng Wu's other exam papers were here and Emperor Wu could draw comparisons between them. The difference was apparent as soon as the two exam sets were put side by side. Emperor Wu's face turned livid right away. Jun Linyuan smirked. Your Majesty, you're doing such a great job running this empire. People are actually trying to fool you with a replica exam paper. You're so getting laughed at. Emperor Wu was already vexed and Jun Linyuan's sarcastic comment only infuriated him further. Smack! He smacked his table hard. I'll have a look myself. Your Majesty, seeing that things were turning south, Master Bai tried to talk Emperor Wu out of it. However, Emperor Wu kicked him away before he could speak. Shut up and get out of my way. Emperor Wu then charged out, headed for Imperial College. Chapter 629, The Jealous Crown Prince. Jun Linyuan didn't go, for he knew that Emperor Wu would be enough for the job. However, at the thought of what they tried to do to that girl, Jun Linyuan smirked. He darted a look at Feng, who nodded back at him, indicating that he would make sure things went as planned. Jun Linyuan's heart melted a little at the thought of the girl. Once he left the Imperial Palace, Jun Linyuan couldn't help but head for the Feng Manor. There was no way the girl knew about this, and he was going to make her sweat a little. Meanwhile, in the Feng Manor. Mingye had been there since earlier that morning. Oh my, Xiao Wu, Mingye waved the list around in Feng Wu's face. You didn't get in. Feng Wu was making tea in the yard. Chaoga and Feng Xiaoqi were both cultivating. Feng Wu was making Xiuling tea, which could help consolidate achievements in cultivation. Mingye rushed over, grabbed a cup of tea, and downed it in one go. So hot, so hot, so hot, Mingye thought his tongue was going to be blistered by the scalding water and he hopped around like a little boy. Feng Wu threw him a dirty look. It's not ready yet. What's the rush? Mingye hissed. You have no idea how good your Xiuling tea smells. We make the tea at home ourselves and we even hired the best tea master to do it for us. But it's nothing compared with yours. Feng Wu was secretly pleased. Of course she was the best. Her beautiful master taught her the skill himself. With such a strict teacher, how could she be anything but the best? However, Feng Wu then realized that after all the tea she made, her beautiful master hadn't been able to drink any of it. When he finally obtained a physical form, that incident took place. Zhua Qingluan. Feng Wu took a deep breath and there was a murderous look in her eyes. Everything quieted down. Even the air seemed to freeze. Hey, little Feng Wu, what's wrong? Mingye put his hands on Feng Wu's slim shoulders and looked concerned. Why are you so quiet? Are you crying? Shit. Seriously? All I did was steal a cup of tea from you. There's really. However, at that critical moment, Jun Linyuan arrived. He saw Mingye holding Feng Wu in his arms as soon as he jumped onto the wall of Fallen Star Yard. From his angle, the two looked so intimate. Instantly, Jun Linyuan felt blood rush into his head. His mind went blank and he was overwhelmed with rage. Feng Wu. I tricked the Emperor to bring you justice, but what are you doing? You're cuddling with another man here? Jun Linyuan's first reaction was to kill Mingye right here and now. Boom! Before he could do anything, the wall went down under his feet. It collapsed. With a crashing sound, the bricks crumbled to the ground. Feng Wu and Mingye turned their heads in unison at the sound. They saw Jun Linyuan standing there like a furious lion. Flames seemed to surge from his head and he looked like he was going to set the sky on fire. Feng Wu shoved Mingye involuntarily. Run! Run! Before Mingye could do anything, Jun Linyuan went up to him and grabbed him by the collar. Feng Wu was vexed. Jun Linyuan, let him go. Speaking up for Mingye only made it worse. With a smirk, Jun Linyuan tossed Mingye over the wall. He tossed him out, just like that. Chapter 630, Pay Back with Your Life. Poor Mingye. It was only a few days ago when he was stood up by Jun Linyuan and spent a whole night on a tower in the cold. He ended up catching a bad cold and doing poorly in the exam. He had yet to recover, and now this happened. With a whooshing sound, Mingye was tossed out of the courtyard. Feng Wu watched as Mingye flew further and further away through the air. She couldn't believe it. Jun Linyuan. What the hell? Have you lost your mind again? Feng Wu glared at him. The crown prince snorted. After everything he had done for her, this was what she did in return? And she was yelling at him. Jun Linyuan was so mad. You want to pass the exam? Forget it. Jun Linyuan stormed off. And he disappeared out of sight almost immediately. Feng Wu was speechless. Less than 3 seconds had passed from Jun Linyuan showing up to his departure. Hence, when Chaoga and the others rushed out, all they saw was the rubble on the ground and the big hole in the wall. Duan Chaoga stared in shocked silence. Feng Xiaoqi didn't know what to say. Everyone stared at Feng Wu in bewilderment. Jiuling asked, Miss, what happened? Was someone here? Feng Wu rubbed her forehead. What did Jun Linyuan mean by that? She might actually fail the exam if he stuck his nose in it. However, her exam result was directly related to the broken star piece, which in turn, was the only chance of saving her beautiful master. Feng Wu had never felt so agitated. Jun Linyuan left the Feng manor with a livid face and in a foul mood. Walking behind Jun Linyuan, Chang San didn't dare utter a word, seeing how infuriated his master was. Bang! Jun Linyuan kicked the door to Mr. Zhu's office open. Everyone inside turned their heads in his direction, astonished. Emperor Wu had arrived at Imperial College earlier in a threatening manner. Seeing that the emperor had come all the way here himself, Mr. Zhu's stomach lurched. He had a bad feeling about this. Had he bitten off more than he could chew? Emperor Wu glared at Mr. Zhu as soon as he walked in and cut to the chase. You have 1 minute to hand over Feng Wu's paper, or there will be consequences. Your Majesty, Mr. Zhu dropped to his knees and tried to explain, but Emperor Wu only waved him off. I don't want an explanation. Mr. Zhu felt like crying. Emperor Wu was anything but mild-tempered. Starting off his career as a military man, he was known for his decisiveness and relentless stratagems. He had only stopped executing people as frequently after he got older, which made him seem more approachable than he really was. Mr. Zhu wailed, but Your Majesty, I've handed over Miss Feng Wu's paper already. Where am I supposed to find another one? Emperor Wu smirked, then smacked the replica on Mr. Zhu's face. Zhuahe! Do you seriously think you can fool me with this? The paper hit Mr. Zhu on the face, then fell to the floor, landing right in front of Mr. Zhu. Mr. Zhu took a glance. And his heart skipped a beat. It was the paper he had written himself. His Majesty had seen through it. Mr. Zhu's pupils contracted and he was so nervous. Damn it! How could His Majesty have realized it? Was His Majesty just probing, or did he have any actual proof? Your Majesty, this is Miss Feng Wu's paper. Mr. Zhu decided to stick with his plan. Please have a look at the serial number. It's 10,001. And there's the name. Emperor Wu only smirked. Chapter 631, His Royal Highness is here. A chilly air filled the room and there was a murderous look on the Emperor's face. Emperor Wu snorted. You're in charge of Imperial College at the moment. So, If you can't find me that paper today, I'm going to hand Feng Wu your head on a plate. Mr. Zhuo drew in his breath. He didn't realize that it would be this serious. Stealing a look at Emperor Wu, he saw that the latter looked like he was out to kill. The emperor wasn't joking. Mr. Zhuo was very conflicted. The paper was sitting in his chest pocket. Should he hand it over now? Emperor Wu sneered at him. Nothing is going to happen if you find that paper. Otherwise, Zhuo, I'm going to give your head to Feng Wu as compensation. Mr. Zhuo felt like crying. How could it be so serious? Why had it turned into a life-threatening matter? What Mr. Zhuo didn't know was how Jun Linyuan had taunted the emperor earlier in the imperial palace. Emperor Wu felt so humiliated. To make up for it, the emperor had made up his mind to get to the bottom of this. Your Majesty, may I go look for it? Emperor Wu looked at him with an impassive face. He wouldn't have been so bossy if Mr. Liu were here. No, Mr. Liu would never have let such a thing happen. Mr. Zhuo stepped out of the room and only had time to heave a sigh of relief when the chief steward's voice rang out behind him. Mr. Zhuo, I'm going to keep you company. The chief steward smiled at him. Could Mr. Zhuo say no to that? Of course not. He had to control his facial muscles and he forced a smile. That's great. This way, please. In the record office, Mr. Wu looked at Mr. Zhuo, flustered. What should he do now? Mr. Zhuo cast a threatening look at the teacher, warning the latter not to say a word. He then went off to flip through the files and he kept stealing glances at the chief steward while he pretended to look for the paper. The chief steward's gaze never shifted away from Mr. Zhuo. Hence, Mr. Zhuo couldn't find any chance to take the paper out of his pocket and put it back into the file. What should he do? Just then, footsteps came from outside. Mr. Zhuo looked up. His Royal Highness? Why was he here? Jun Linyuan didn't say anything to Mr. Zhuo, but only asked Feng, what do we have here? Feng said, they still haven't found the paper. Jun Linyuan smirked. Crossing his hands behind his back, he fixed his cold gaze on Mr. Zhuo with an indecipherable look on his face. Linyuan, why are you here? Hearing the noise, Emperor Wu led a team of people toward the record office and spotted Jun Linyuan as soon as he walked in. Apparently, the brat was intrigued as well. Jun Linyuan sneered, sat down on a chair, and remained silent. And he was giving off an air that said, I'm not happy and I want to kill someone. Everyone tried to stay as far away from him as possible. Emperor Wu found it rather strange. Could anyone piss off Jun Linyuan like this? This wasn't right. His son always took revenge on the spot and never kept his enemy alive longer than necessary. Someone in this empire could actually irritate the boy like this and he still hadn't killed them yet? Emperor Wu found it incredible. Sensing his father's curious gaze, Jun Linyuan cast an intimidating look at Emperor Wu. And it reminded the emperor of an angry wolf. Emperor Wu cleared his throat. What a brat! Even he himself couldn't withstand the boy's fury, so who could? Emperor Wu really wanted to know the answer. However, he had to keep his focus on Mr. Zhuo at the moment. Found it yet? Mr. Zhuo was going to hand over the paper, but now, he decided against it. He would insist that he didn't know. Because His Royal Highness was here. Chapter 632, Whose side is His Royal Highness on? As Zhuo Qingluan's uncle, Mr. Zhuo was quite an influential figure in his clan. He was in on a lot of things. Zhuo Qingluan herself had said something at a family meeting once. She said that she was going to marry Jun Linyuan and that Jun Linyuan was fond of her. Therefore, Mr. Zhuo was thrilled to see Jun Linyuan here. The young man was going to be the Zhuo family's royal son-in-law, and with the crown prince here, Mr. Zhuo was sure that His Majesty would cut him some slack. Hence, Mr. Zhuo dropped to his knees with a long face. Your Majesty, I've searched everywhere in the record office, but there's no extra exam paper. The one Grand Secretary Feng handed in was really Feng Wu's paper. Emperor Wu was furious. This Zhuo was unbelievable. It was so obvious that his scam had been exposed, but he still insisted on his innocence. The emperor couldn't stand this man. Infuriated, Emperor Wu kicked Mr. Zhuo's shoulder. "You're abominable. Your Majesty. I haven't done anything wrong. What on earth is happening? Your Majesty, you're such a wise ruler that I'm sure you won't wrong an innocent man," Mr. Zhuo went on, claiming his innocence. A few steps away, Mr. Wu had long dropped to his knees and prostrated himself on the ground. He was shaking all over. Finally, he knew what had happened. Master Bai, the chief steward, Grand Secretary Feng, His Royal Highness, and His Majesty were all here. They had all come here for Feng Wu's exam paper. Mr. Wu was scared to death. He regretted what he had done so much. Had he known that things would go this far, he would never have stolen Feng Wu's paper to flatter Mr. Zhuo. What should he do now? What to do? Kneeling there, Mr. Wu shook like an autumn leaf in the wind. However, all the attention was on Mr. Zhuo at the moment. Emperor Wu snorted. "Take him. I'll decide what to do with him after we find the paper." He then turned to leave. It wasn't just about Feng Wu's paper. Emperor Wu was offended mainly because he couldn't stand the idea of his imperial college being handled by someone like Zhuo He. Mr. Zhuo had never expected Emperor Wu to dismiss him from his post without any evidence of his wrongdoing. He was furious. He turned to Jun Linyuan for help. Your Royal Highness, I really am innocent. I don't know anything about this." Emperor Wu flared up. How dare this subject turn to Jun Linyuan for help? It just so happened that the Crown Prince was in a foul mood himself. Darting a glance at Emperor Wu, Jun Linyuan said, "Are you sure you're going to arrest this man without any actual proof?" Emperor Wu was even more infuriated. "Jun Linyuan. Get out of my sight." The Crown Prince always did as he pleased, not to mention that Emperor Wu had never been able to intimidate him. He only sneered at his father. "Your Majesty, you really should gather the necessary evidence first. Do you have any?" Emperor Wu almost exploded. He knew it. This brat was the bane of his life. Emperor Wu stamped his foot in rage and roared, "Get out! Get out of here!" However, Jun Linyuan sat there, unperturbed. The more furious Emperor Wu was, the calmer the Crown Prince became. He even poured himself a cup of tea and sipped on it. Mr. Zhuo was thrilled. Zhuo Qingluan was right. His Royal Highness was fond of her. The Crown Prince was taking Zhuo He's side because he liked Zhuo Qingluan and was willing to offend the Emperor for the girl. Talk about priorities. Despite his excitement, Mr. Zhuo kept it to himself and still had that miserable look on his face. Chapter 633, The Crown Prince's Future Wife? Your Royal Highness, please talk to His Majesty. I really have no idea what happened. I handed over Feng Wu's paper and she did poorly because she isn't good enough. We as teachers only mark the papers, we really shouldn't be blamed for their bad grades. If it were someone else. If Qingluan were to take the exam, I'm sure she'd be the best. There's no way that she'd fail the exam. At the end of the day, Feng Wu has no one to blame but herself. Right? What do you mean by right? Emperor Wu was so angry that he almost fainted. Zhuo He. I see what you're doing by bringing Zhuo Qingluan up. Emperor Wu threw a dirty look at Jun Linyuan and disliked Zhuo Qingluan even more. Jun Linyuan, you've decided to work against me, then? Emperor Wu narrowed his eyes. Everyone else was terrified by the interaction between the father and son. One was the emperor in the prime of his life and the other an exceptionally talented crown prince. What would happen if the two of them decided to turn on each other? Would the empire be ruined? However, Jun Linyuan only casually said, "Show me the evidence." You're so sure that I don't have any proof, do you? Emperor Wu smirked. He suddenly turned his sharp gaze on Mr. Wu, who was kneeling on the ground. Mr. Wu had been shaking the whole time, which was enough to show how terrified he was. Everyone here was anything but slow. especially those who personally served Emperor Wu. The man was the most superior figure in the empire. All Emperor Wu needed to do was glance at the chief steward. With a flip of his hand, the chief steward dragged Mr. Wu to his feet. The highest-ranking official Mr. Wu had ever met before today was the principal of Imperial College. What had just happened was beyond his imagination, especially when the emperor and the crown prince had a row. He was almost frightened to death. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. I had nothing to do with this. I didn't steal Feng Wu's paper. Mr. Wu struggled violently. Did we say that Feng Wu's paper was stolen? How did you know that? The chief steward grinned. Ha! Mr. Wu's head went blank. I don't know. I don't know anything. You know everything and you're lying. The chief steward wrapped his fingers around Mr. Wu's throat. I'm going to count to 3. Tell me the truth, or not only will you die, so will your wife and kid, your clan, and your most distant relatives. 3, 2. All right. All right. Mr. Wu had no choice now. It wasn't just his life, but also those of his family and friends. It was Mr. Zhua. Mr. Zhua put me up to it. He forced me to steal Feng Wu's paper for him. Mr. Wu decided to pin it on Mr. Zhua. What? All eyes were on Mr. Zhua now. And Mr. Zhua looked like he had been struck by a thunderbolt. No. I didn't. Mr. Zhua dropped to his knees at Emperor Wu's feet. Your Majesty, Wu Ming is lying and he's making a false charge against me. There was no way that I would ask him to do such a thing. Why would I do that to a mere girl? Since Mr. Wu had made up his mind, he decided to go all the way. Mr. Zhua, you did it because Feng Wu did so well and her answers were impeccable. When was the last time you saw an exam paper with full marks? You didn't do it for yourself, but for Zhua Qingyuan, the future wife of the crown prince. The future wife of the crown prince? Emperor Wu smirked. Chapter 634, My Xiao Wu. Zhua Qingyuan was the future wife of the crown prince? Said who? Emperor Wu threw a dirty look at Jun Linyuan. Jun Linyuan was utterly bemused. Mr. Zhua was so vexed. Little did he expect that Wu Ming would become his doom. He wanted to charge at the man, but somehow, Feng had blocked his way and he couldn't get to Wu Ming. Mr. Wu spoke fast and all his accusations poured out. Mr. Zhua, you had me remove Feng Wu's paper from the file. She got full marks, but you took Feng Wu's paper to stop her from getting famous again. Then, to cover your tracks, you mimicked her handwriting and made a replica of her paper, which only scored 179, and so was excluded from the top 1,000. You thought no one would find out, but you were wrong. His Majesty is wise and is in need of talented young people, so he looked into it. One can never cover their tracks completely, Mr. Zhua. You still have Feng Wu's paper on you. I bet you haven't sent it to Zhua Qingyuan yet. Hand it over to His Majesty and confess your crime. You. Mr. Zhua almost choked and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He had never expected Wu Ming to turn him in. That's bullshit. You're making things up. You came to me with Feng Wu's paper and you. Mr. Zhua was so angry that he couldn't think straight anymore. He said that aloud. And he regretted it as soon as he said it, but it was too late. Mr. Zhua stood there, his head spinning. He didn't know what to do. Emperor Wu snorted. Zhua he. How dare you claim your innocence after everything you did? Am I a fool to you? The more Emperor Wu thought about it, the angrier he felt. He wanted to kill Zhua he himself. Terrified, Mr. Zhua knelt down and shivered. Jun Linyuan was his only hope now. Your Royal Highness, Mr. Zhua crawled to Jun Linyuan's side. Wu Ming did it. I really had no idea. Please help me, for Qingyuan's sake. Jun Linyuan gave Mr. Zhua an irritated glance. The man had no spine. It was a shame to Imperial College to have him as a leader. What would other people think of Imperial College from now on? Moreover, what was he thinking? Threatening him with switching one? Switching one? Who's that? Jun Linyuan rose to his feet and kicked Mr. Zhuo away. As Mr. Zhuo fell backward, a paper flew out of his chest pocket and fell to the ground. Feng caught the paper before it landed and held it up. It was an exam paper. Feng Wu's exam paper. Feng then handed it to Jun Linyuan. Mr. Zhuo's stomach lurched. Shit! He cried out, that's a fake one. That's not Feng Wu's paper. Glancing at the paper, Jun Linyuan gave Zhuo a crooked smile. I watched her as she answered this paper, every word of it. And you're telling me now that this isn't hers? What? Everyone stared at Jun Linyuan in astonishment. What did he mean by, every word of it? Even Emperor Wu was shocked. Chapter 635, The results will be out today. Didn't he abhor Feng Wu? What was he doing, watching Xiao Wu take the exam? That statement contained so much information. Mr. Zhuo was the most astonished of them all. He had genuinely believed that the Crown Prince would treat him differently because of Zhuo Qingyuan. Your Royal Highness, Zhuo Qingyuan. Jun Linyuan sneered. Who the hell is Zhuo Qingyuan? Mr. Zhuo felt as if he had been stabbed in the chest. Who the hell was Zhuo Qingyuan? Who the hell? That was the worst news for the Zhuo family. His Royal Highness didn't seem to like Zhuo Qingyuan at all. The following day, Feng Wu jumped over the wall first thing in the morning. Old Master Feng, Feng Wu called out in an excited voice. Every morning after breakfast, the old man would take a walk in the courtyard. Feng Wu jumped out of the dry well at that moment and it made Grand Secretary Feng jump a little. You naughty kid, Grand Secretary Feng said grumpily. What are you doing hiding in that well at this early hour? Feng Wu grinned. The spiritual essence is really dense down there and it's good for my cultivation. You're making things up. The old man wouldn't believe her. Feng Wu took the old man's arm, still grinning. I'm not. Check this out. She put away her concealing jade. The old man's eyes lit up. He realized that Feng Wu was, how can that be? The old man was shocked by Feng Wu's cultivation level. You're a level 5 spiritual grandmaster already. Feng Wu nodded with a smile. The old man had a hard time digesting the news. But you were a level 4 only a few days ago. It was so unfair. Not only could she do well in an exam, she also made such quick progress in cultivation as if she had wings. To be honest, of all the talented people the old man had met over the years, he had never seen anyone like Feng Wu. Feng Wu giggled, feeling very pleased with herself. How did you do it? The old man didn't know what else to say. The kid was born to make other people jealous. She was a cripple. Said who? And she wasn't a genius anymore? She was the definition of a genius. Tilting her head, Feng Wu pointed at the dry well. It's really efficient to cultivate down there. Grand Secretary Feng still thought that she was making things up. He jabbed her forehead with a finger. You little rogue. Feng Wu chuckled, but didn't try to explain. What are you up to? It's so early, Grand Secretary Feng put both hands behind his back and asked proudly. The matter had been taken care of last night, but because the Zhuo family was involved and malpractice in Imperial College was a rather sensitive topic, the whole thing had been kept a secret. No one else knew the truth. No wonder the girl was worried. Old master, I was told that, taking the old man's arm, Feng Wu tilted her head and asked, the list is out? Yup. The old man raised his chin proudly. I also heard that I'm not on that list. Feng Wu met the old man's eyes. Nervous? Of course not. Feng Wu patted her chest. I have faith in this empire, in His Majesty, and in you. They walked into a pavilion at that moment. Feng Wu wiped a stone stool clean with a handkerchief, then helped the old man sit down. The old man darted a glance at the old steward. The old steward went out to guard the perimeter. Feng Wu pricked up her ears. Old Master Feng said, "The results are out and the list will be put up outside Imperial College later today." Chapter 636, You've yet to meet the grandma. Seeing that Feng Wu didn't seem disturbed at all, the old man asked in resignation, "Aren't you even a little bit worried?" "For what? I've got you, don't I?" Judging by the look on the old man's face, Feng Wu knew right away that the matter had been taken care of, or the old man would have been angrier than her. Grand Secretary Feng rapped Feng Wu on her little head. "Do you ever get flustered? Well, you got the highest score, as you predicted." "Really? Do I detect a story behind it?" "Yes, you do. And it's quite a story." The old man looked like he was going to make a long speech. Feng Wu poured some tea for the old man as she listened. "Why, Xiaoling tea?" Grand Secretary Feng recognized the tea by its scent and was pleasantly surprised. "Where did you get it?" "From Master Linghu." "Master Linghu?" "That was the most famous tea master in the empire." Feng Wu shook her head. "No, I made this myself." "Old Master, what do you think?" "This is great." Old Master Feng looked at Feng Wu in amazement. "Kiddo, you never cease to amaze me. I would never think you could make Xiaoling tea yourself." Old Master Feng didn't know how many more surprises this so-called crippled girl would give him. She was making progress in her cultivation at an incredible speed. She had wondrous formation skills. And she could make Xiaoling tea as well. Like a real tea master. Feng Wu gloated. Of course she could. She had the most perfect beautiful master on this continent. Xiaoling tea was the least of the wonders she could create. Feng Wu smiled. "Old Master, I'll make you some more if you like it." "Good, good." Sipping from his white jade teacup, Grand Secretary Feng was in a great mood. He then told Feng Wu in detail about what happened the day before. He concluded his narration with a sigh of emotion. "His Royal Highness took Mr. Zhu's side at first and I was worried. Fortunately, he switched sides in the end." Feng Wu frowned. This Jun Linyuan just couldn't stop trying to sabotage her plans. Tilting her head, she asked Grand Secretary Feng, "If Jun Linyuan sets his mind to work against me, will His Majesty be able to do anything about it?" Grand Secretary Feng gave it some thought, then asked, "Do you want the truth?" "So, the truth is, Jun Linyuan will get away with it?" Feng Wu couldn't believe it. Grand Secretary Feng nodded. "That's ridiculous." Feng Wu smacked the table. "Jun Linyuan is the crown prince and his father is the emperor. In what world would an emperor yield to a crown prince?" "You forgot about the grandmother." Grand Secretary Feng smiled bitterly. "You haven't met her yet, and when you do, you'll understand." "But I have," Feng Wu said grumpily. "The old lady summoned me when I was little. I remember her as an exceptionally stern and serious lady. Of course she was strict with you. You were His Royal Highness's little fiancé and she had to set her standards very high." Grand Secretary Feng chuckled. "Ha! Are you suggesting that the Empress Dowager dotes on Jun Linyuan?" Grand Secretary Feng shook his head. "No, I mean that she worships the ground His Royal Highness walks on." Feng Wu was speechless. Grand Secretary Feng gave her a wry smile. "You'll see when you meet her. She's some old lady." Feng Wu was speechless. Feng Wu and Grand Secretary Feng were still chatting when Steward Feng approached them. Chapter 637, Can I have the house, please? "Master, Princess Mu is here," Steward Feng said with a wry smile. "Princess Mu? As in Mu Yao Yao?" Grand Secretary Feng frowned, but before he could say anything, Mu Yao Yao's shrill voice came from outside. "This is my grandpa's house. Why can't I come in? Get out of my way. Now!" Mu Yao Yao ran into sight as she yelled. She put on a charming, innocent smile as soon as she spotted Grand Secretary Feng in the pavilion. However, she looked disgusted as soon as she noticed Feng Wu. Feng Wu. What are you doing here? Frowning, Mu Yaoyao glared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu shrugged. None of your business, girl. Grandpa, what's she doing here at this early hour? Mu Yaoyao hurled the question at Grand Secretary Feng. The old man was displeased. All men had preferences, and compared with Mu Yaoyao, the old man liked Feng Wu much better as a granddaughter. For Feng Wu fitted the image of an outstanding youngster. At the age of 13, the girl was brilliant, beautiful, adorable, talented, capable, level-headed, and knew what she was doing. The list simply went on and on. Whereas Mu Yaoyao, she was nothing but a spoiled girl who only wanted more things. Taking that into consideration, the old man liked Feng Wu even more. Hence, he frowned at Mu Yaoyao. Do you want to talk to me? Hearing that question, Mu Yaoyao immediately forgot about Feng Wu. Running up to Grand Secretary Feng, she held the old man's arm. Grandpa, I brought you someone. I'm sure you'll be glad to meet him. I'm your granduncle. The old man corrected her. Mu Yaoyao ignored the reminder. She went on swaying Grand Secretary Feng's arm back and forth. Grandpa, aren't you going back to your hometown after you retire? You're going to sell this house, aren't you? How about you don't sell it? Can you give it to me, please? Give it to you. Excuse me. Feng Wu threw a dirty look at Mu Yaoyao. The area under these buildings was filled with top-grade spiritual stones. Give it to her. Grand Secretary Feng frowned a little. Grandpa, can't I have it? Mu Yaoyao sounded disappointed, but she cheered up almost right away. Grandpa, it's all right if you can't give it to me, but you have to promise me something. At those words, Mu Yaoyao turned around and said to a middle-aged man, whom she had led into the house, Chief Yao, this is Grand Secretary Feng, my grandpa. Mu Yaoyao then said to Grand Secretary Feng, Grandpa, this is Yao Zhong, the current chief of the Yao clan, who's from the eldest branch of the clan. Their family business is very famous in the imperial capital. They have shops all over the empire and they're one of the 3 largest businesses. Grand Secretary Feng frowned and stopped Mu Yaoyao with a wave of his hand. I'm not that old yet and I know what the Yao clan does for a living, Grand Secretary Feng said impatiently. Cut to the chase. All right, Mu Yaoyao was noticeably crestfallen. Sensing Feng Wu's gaze, Mu Yaoyao glared at her. She went on, Grandpa, isn't your house for sale? Chief Yao is very interested. The frown on Grand Secretary Feng's face grew bigger. Feng Wu was going to stay out of it at first, but she pricked up her ears when the house was mentioned. She had to have this house and no one could take it from her. Despite her determination, Feng Wu maintained her indifferent demeanor and didn't let her emotions show. Grand Secretary Feng said nothing, which Mu Yaoyao took as him considering the offer. She smiled. Chapter 638, To Tell You the Truth. Grandpa, isn't your house for sale already? You can sell it to the Yao family now. They're very rich people. Mu Yaoyao gave Chief Yao a look, prompting him to speak. Chief Yao smiled. Grand Secretary Feng, I heard that this house is selling for 10,000 taels of silver. Well, the Yao clan is willing to give you 1,000,000 silver taels, together with a 10,000-year-old Lingji mushroom and a blood ginseng. 10 times. The Yao clan was offering a price 10 times what was asked for. They weren't buying a house. They were dumping money on the old man. Feng Wu was alarmed. Could it be that the Yao family had learned of the possible treasure hidden in this house? Otherwise, why would they offer an exorbitantly high price? This didn't make sense. Grand Secretary Feng thought the same. He gestured at an empty chair in front of him. Flattered, Chief Yao only sat down after politely declining at first. Why? Grand Secretary Feng neither rejected nor accepted the offer at once. Instead, he studied Chief Yao with a brooding look in his eyes, which had seen a fair share of the world during his long career as a politician. Xiao said, "Grand Secretary Feng, your manor has great feng shui. With the lake at the front and the mountains in the distance, feng shui-wise, the residence is such an auspicious place." "That's it? Grand Secretary Feng, to tell you the truth," Xiao said with a wry smile, "with my family's business, we've accumulated some wealth over the years, but the kids of the younger generation haven't been doing well in their studies. Only a handful of them have gotten into Imperial College and the future of the clan doesn't look very promising. We thought that maybe if we bought your house, the kids could gain from this association with you. Maybe they could do better." "That's it?" Grand Secretary Feng repeated the question, but the look in his eyes was more stern now. To Feng Wu, Grand Secretary Feng was an amiable elderly man who was a little proud at times, but to Xiao, he was the old Grand Secretary. To be able to work as a Grand Secretary, the old man was anything but ordinary. He had to be exceptionally circumspect and far-seeing to manage all his subordinates, not to mention that he had managed to retire peacefully. With all the experience he had accumulated over the years, a fraction of his majestic demeanor was enough to intimidate Xiao here. Under Grand Secretary Feng's wise, piercing gaze, Xiao felt suffocated. He flinched. The old man might be retired, but he was no less frightening than when he had held that post. Xiao had no choice but to tell the truth. "I overheard that there's a big secret hidden in this house and the Feng family hasn't been able to solve it, so..." Grand Secretary Feng turned his sharp gaze on Mu Yaoyao. Lady Mu Yaoyao's mother, had grown up in the Feng manor, which was why she knew about it. "Your mother told him that?" "Grandpa, mother, did tell me about it, but haven't you been unable to solve it? If we wait any longer, it'll bring the Feng family ill fortune." "Grandpa, just sell the house to the Yao clan." "How much did they pay you?" Grand Secretary Feng asked in an emotionless, unhurried tone. "Grandpa, I didn't." Mu Yaoyao tried to play the innocent girl again. Grand Secretary Feng snorted. As the saying went, money makes the world go round. Someone like Mu Yaoyao would never offer her help without enough financial incentive. Grand Secretary Feng waved his hand. "See them out. Grandpa, Grandpa." Chapter 639, You'll send hitmen after me. However reluctant Mu Yaoyao was, she was still dragged out by Steward Feng. Grand Secretary Feng. Feng Wu wanted to say something, but the old man wasn't in the mood. He was so disappointed. Lady Mu wasn't his own daughter, but he had brought her up himself. And what she had tried to do to him was unbelievable. Grand Secretary Feng waved his hand, indicating that Feng Wu should keep her silence. Lord Mu is the patron of the Yao clan's business. Grand Secretary Feng snorted. Mu Yaoyao is trying to take the house for herself through the Yao clan. She thinks I can't see through her little scam. Why couldn't she just say so if she wanted to buy the house herself? Why did she have to go through a third party? And she pretended she had no part in it. That innocent look she had faked was ridiculous. Grand Secretary Feng, don't be mad. Mu Yaoyao can have her own plan and so can you. Feng Wu shrugged. But I'll have to sell this house eventually and it has to happen within 2 weeks. Grand Secretary Feng sighed. Otherwise, I fear that the curse will fall on Xian Yi. Grand Secretary Feng said in resignation, but I can't just sell it to anyone. There are rules. First of all, the buyer has to be a master-level formation master. Then, they have to be compatible with the aura of the house. Moreover, Grand Secretary Feng shifted his gaze to Feng Wu as he spoke. Old Master, you. Oh my. Grand Secretary Feng smacked the table. The answer was right in front of my eyes all along. Xiao Wu, you fit the criteria to the T. To the T? That's right. Grand Secretary Feng asked, aren't you a master-level formation master? I am. And are you not compatible with the aura of the manor? I am. And the Lingji mushroom and blood ginseng? Actually, I do have them. Problem solved. Grand Secretary Feng had always been a free spirit, and he had only become more capricious after retirement. Seeing that Feng Wu was hesitant, he made the decision for her. What more do we need? I'm giving the house to you for free. For free. Feng Wu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You declined 1,000,000 taels of silver from the Yao family, and you're giving the house to me for nothing? Well, you're a very likable kid. Grand Secretary Feng told the old steward to get a pen and paper ready. The old steward came back with the stationery shortly afterward. What a willful old man. He wanted to give the house away and he began to draft the official document right away. He finished it in no time. Feng Wu took a look and saw that it was very succinct. She was to accept the house free of charge, no obligations attached. Here, sign it. The old man handed the writing brush to Feng Wu. Sign here and we'll go change the title deed to your name. Then it's yours. What are you waiting for, kiddo? Are you not happy with a big house with great feng shui? The old man teased. Feng Wu would be lying if she said that she wasn't tempted. She had no idea why, but she just kept running into good people. Mu Yao Yao was family, but instead of selling it to that girl, Grand Secretary Feng was giving the house to Feng Wu as a gift. Why, are you so happy that you're going to cry? The old man chuckled when he saw the dazed look on Feng Wu's face. Feng Wu bit her lip and handed the paper back to him. What's wrong? The old man was bewildered. Feng Wu said, if I sign this now, you'll send hitmen after me later. Chapter 640, The Big Secret. Why would I? Grand Secretary Feng looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment. Feng Wu had planned to tell Grand Secretary Feng the truth, or she wouldn't have deliberately jumped out of the dry well. She grinned at Grand Secretary Feng. Haven't you been searching for the secret of this manor? Grand Secretary Feng's pupils contracted at Feng Wu's words. Do you know anything about that? He found Feng Wu's question dubious. Feng Wu nodded. I do. The look on Grand Secretary Feng's face changed instantly. He couldn't believe it. No one who had lived in this manor had been able to find the secret. How could a girl as young as Feng Wu? Follow me, please. Feng Wu took the old man by his hand and led him to the dry well. The old man was confused. Now, jump. Feng Wu was going to take the old man down the well with her. The old steward interjected, Miss Feng Wu, please don't. My old master is. However, Grand Secretary Feng cut him short. I'm sure Xiao Wu has her reasons. I'll go have a look. Being a free spirit, Grand Secretary Feng had only become more capricious these days and wouldn't haggle over trifles. No one would expect the once Grand Secretary of the Empire to do such a reckless thing. He felt something strange as soon as they landed at the bottom of the dry well. Feng Wu tilted her head and grinned. Old master, can you feel anything different? The spiritual essence down here seems to be denser. Is this a place designed for cultivation? Grand Secretary Feng looked pleasantly surprised. Feng Wu snapped her fingers. Feng Tutu dashed off from Feng Wu's chest pocket and began to dig into the ground. However, Grand Secretary Feng's attention had been drawn to the walls of the well. As he felt his way around, he cried out in surprise. The rocks used to build these walls are really unusual. They look like crude spiritual stones. Wait, they are crude spiritual stones. Grand Secretary Feng was pleasantly surprised. So, this well was built with crude spiritual stones. How extravagant. Feng Wu only smiled. The old man sighed with emotion. If my guess is correct, these are all crude top-grade spiritual stones. Gosh, that's incredible. The stones alone are worth more than this manor. Kiddo, you've got sharp eyes. Feng Wu was still grinning. Just then, there was a whooshing sound. Feng Tutu jumped out from under the ground and ran up to Grand Secretary Feng. Grand Secretary Feng's eyes widened at the sight of Feng Tutu. Right now, Feng Tutu had a bib around its neck, which resembled the pouch of a kangaroo. In its mouth was a spiritual stone, and the pocket of the bib was filled with spiritual stones as well. Grand Secretary Feng. As experienced as the old man was, he had rarely seen such high-quality spiritual stones before. This, Grand Secretary Feng was surprised. "Old master, what do you think of these stones?" Picking up Feng Tutu, Feng Wu put the cub in Grand Secretary Feng's hands. With the top-grade spiritual stone in its mouth, Feng Tutu looked like it was eating a pancake. Its eyes were so innocent and it had such a confused look on its face. Taking a stone out of Feng Tutu's bib, Grand Secretary Feng looked at it closely. He was even more amazed. They're top-grade spiritual stones, every single one of them. Xiao Wu, where? Chapter 641, I'll take it. Old master, you've seen it yourself, Feng Wu said in a calm, earnest tone as she gestured at their surroundings at the bottom of the well. She was right. There was no reason for Grand Secretary Feng to doubt her. What's underneath here? Putting an open palm on the ground, Grand Secretary Feng extended his spiritual essence downward. Beyond layer of rocks, he reached an open space. Grand Secretary Feng's sight was filled with green, as in the color of the best jade stones. This, even a man like him, who had seen his fair share of the world, couldn't help but cry out in surprise. Are they, all spiritual stones? Beneath this manner? Judging by the consistency of the color, they were all medium grade or above. Feng Wu nodded with a smile. Grand Secretary Feng didn't know what to say. He was so astonished that his knees buckled and he fell on his butt on the ground. Old master, you. Feng Wu wanted to help him to his feet, but the old man waved her off. No, please don't. He expanded his search from the dry well as the center. At first, he thought that there were spiritual stones stashed underground, but what he discovered after his investigation took him by surprise. It's a lode, and an unmined one. Feng Wu nodded. The old man took a deep breath. That's just so. He had never expected this to be the secret that the family had been trying to figure out for generations. Grand Secretary Feng had investigated the underground area before and had even dug up the ground, but those attempts had all been futile. He only realized today that it was because he had used the wrong entrance. This dry well was the real entrance to that lode. Kiddo, you really are. Was this what a phoenix girl was like? Exactly how lucky was she? How did you find out? Grand Secretary Feng was much calmer after coming back up from the dry well, and he asked Feng Wu the question with a smile. Feng Wu shrugged. I was sitting on the wall one day and I saw a flash in that dry well. Based on the time, the direction, and the terrain, I was pretty sure I knew what it was. Moreover, there was Feng Tutu. Feng Wu rubbed the cub's head. Treasure hunting is in its nature. It went in and came back up with a top-grade spiritual stone. There was no question. We have a load of top-grade spiritual stones under our feet. But you still declined my offer when you know what's hidden underground. Grand Secretary Feng sighed with emotion. In terms of money, the spiritual stones down there was worth the income of a small country. However, not only had the girl refused the gift, she also shared the secret with him. Grand Secretary Feng had always liked the kid, and now, he thought the world of her. More importantly, she was kind and had a noble heart. Who wouldn't like such a child? Sign this. Grand Secretary Feng handed Feng Wu the grant agreement. Feng Wu's eyes opened wide. Old master, do you know what you're doing? You have a top-grade spiritual stone lode under your house, and you're giving everything to me? Grand Secretary Feng said grumpily, you shared such a big secret with me. I'm not going to act like a stingy man. Others have searched for generations, but remained clueless. Whereas you did nothing but sit on that wall, and you solved the mystery. That's just fate. Or, shall we say, the lode was meant to be yours all along. Chapter 642, Jiuzhou. Grand Secretary Feng sighed. At this point in my life, I'm happy enough to know what that secret is. It would be too greedy of me to try to keep it to myself. I might lose a few years of my life if I did that. Now, sign this, please. Seeing that the old man was sincere in his offer, Feng Wu thought that she would look contentious if she continued to decline it. Feng Wu was a free spirit herself and she nodded. Old master, I'll take it. She could always treat Grand Secretary Feng even nicer and take care of him for as long as he lived. Good, good. Grand Secretary Feng was delighted, and decided to share a secret with Feng Wu. Guess what? I did quite a lot of research and I discovered a legend about this land under our feet. A legend? Feng Wu batted her eyelashes, which reminded one of two little fans. Have you heard of Jiuzhou, who once ruled this continent? Grand Secretary Feng's tone was full of respect. Jiuzhou? Feng Wu's eyes widened and her face stiffened with excitement. Of course she had. Jiuzhou, the one-time ruler of the continent, was none other than her beautiful master, who was lying on a bed in her ring right now. Feng Wu stared at Grand Secretary Feng nervously. Needless to say, Grand Secretary Feng had no idea that the person he was gossiping about was close at hand. He went on, according to unofficial records, a long time ago, before the Junmu Empire was established, this land we're living in now had been destroyed once before, with everything burnt to the ground. And the great Jiuzhou was the cause of the calamity. He single-handedly started a war that wiped out the continent. Feng Wu clenched her fists. Her beautiful master was awesome. Yes. He killed all 12 supreme cultivators of the continent, along with numerous capable people. Blood flowed like rivers and the whole continent was shaken. However, during that war, it was said that Jiuzhou lost the person he treasured the most. He treasured the most? Who was that? Was it a man or a woman? Feng Wu stared at Grand Secretary Feng, feeling nervous. A woman, I suppose, Grand Secretary Feng said after some thought. None of this is official, and I'm not sure how accurate the record is. It said that he lost the love of his life in that war, and he shed a teardrop for her. Grand Secretary Feng pointed at the dry well. Maybe, the load was created out of that teardrop. Feng Wu was speechless. The love of his life, the love of his life. Who was she? Are you sure that Jiuzhou used to have a woman he loved? Feng Wu asked quietly. Her head had gone blank and her chest felt hollow. That history was buried with all the fallen heroes, and so few people are still around to remember it. If we can find Jiuzhou's pupils, perhaps they can tell us a few things. But, Grand Secretary Feng smiled bitterly. His pupils are probably the most superior rulers of different regions on this continent. They're so beyond our reach now. Feng Wu could think of nothing but her beautiful master's teardrop. Her ethereal, godlike beautiful master had cried for a woman. Who on earth was she? Feng Wu. Little Feng Wu. Grand Secretary Feng poked Feng Wu's forehead with a finger. Yes. Feng Wu came back to herself. You were saying? Nothing, really. Grand Secretary Feng waved his hand. The exam results will be out today, and you should head back home. You're going to have a busy day, with all the people rushing over to congratulate you. Feng Wu gave him a wry smile. She didn't think that would happen. Chapter 643, Feng Wu, the legendary genius. However, she decided to go back home now, so that she could keep an eye on Lady Wang, in case the woman tried to target her again. Uncle Qiu and Xiling had left already, for Feng Wu's exam result was the most important thing to them at the moment. As soon as they left, Qiaoge dragged Feng Wu out to see the results as well. There was a huge crowd outside the gate of Imperial College. Uncle Qiu, there are so many people. We can't get close enough. Xiling jumped and pushed, but it was too packed for her to make her way through the crowd. People kept getting pushed back and forth in the crowd. Those who made it in laughed and those who failed cried. Uncle Qiao, look! There are people from the Mu family. Mu Yao Yao was a candidate and her family had sent people out here early that morning. And the Duan family, too. Qiuling then spotted the sisters of the Duan family. Everyone took the exam very seriously. The results are out. Just then, the gate opened, and a team of people wearing a special uniform of Imperial College came out. The scroll in their hands was so long that it took all 10 of them together to put it up. The results. Look! Many began to push forward frantically. In order to see the results before anyone else, Qiuling pushed with all her might. It was too dangerous. Feng Wu reached out and pulled her back. Miss! Qiuling was thrilled to see Feng Wu. Miss Wu, the results are out. Let me check it for you. Let me go in. Feng Wu looked at her petite maid in resignation. Are you trying to kill yourself? Look at that crowd. You're not going anywhere. But. No buts. Stay put. Miss, don't you want to know the result? Feng Wu snapped. I know the result. I'm first. There's no need to push through all those people. She was only telling the truth, but they weren't the only people here. Feng Wu heard a snicker as soon as she said those words. She and Chaoga turned around to find the sisters of the Duan family. Duan Chaoyin and Duan Chaoyue. Their servants had run into the crowd to check the results and the two of them were waiting in the shade. It just so happened that they were standing next to Feng Wu and overheard her. Oh my, I was wondering who said that. Isn't it Feng Wu, the legendary genius? Duan Chaoyin giggled. What did I hear? Feng Wu said she was first. Duan Chaoyue snickered. Chaoga flared up at the sight of the two girls and she glared at them. Hey! Duan Chaoyue! Duan Chaoyin! What are you laughing at? Duan Chaoyin smiled at Duan Chaoyue. Some people are just so stupid. We've been laughing for so long and she doesn't even know what it's about. Duan Chaoyue tittered. Chaoga raised her hand in a threatening manner. But Duan Chaoyin wasn't intimidated, nor was she afraid of the humiliation. For to her mind, Feng Wu and Chaoga would be even more humiliated. Everyone! Look! Feng Wu the genius wants to beat us up because she didn't get into Imperial College. Feng Wu the genius? Most people wouldn't have paid any attention if Duan Chaoyin hadn't mentioned Feng Wu's name. After all, everyone only cared about looking for their names on that list. Chapter 644, More Laughter. But Feng Wu the genius. Which Feng Wu? That Feng Wu, the one who was mistaken for using a fake exam permit. What genius? Isn't she crippled? She can think of herself as a genius all she wants. What did I hear? Feng Wu the genius failed the exam. What do you expect? It's only natural that she failed. Instantly, all eyes were on Feng Wu. Well, I was wondering who was making all the noise. It was you. A voice rang out behind Feng Wu. It was kind of familiar, but not really. Feng Wu turned her head and recognized the person. It was Yi Yifei, the one who had had a confrontation with Feng Wu before. She was already a first-year student at Imperial College, but those around her were all candidates this year and she was their leader. Behind her were Huiyin and the others. Yi Yifei had been grounded by her family for a while because of what happened at World Tower. Hence, she held Feng Wu responsible for it. Feng Wu, do you have no shame at all? How dare you say you can get into Imperial College? Duan Chaoyin was delighted to have an ally and she smirked. Get into Imperial College? According to her, she got the highest score in the exam. Ha ha ha. All four people behind Yi Yifei guffawed. Yi Yifei laughed until she was in tears. Passing the exam is already impossible for you. Getting the highest score? Gosh, Feng Wu, have you been practicing how to be more shameless all these years? Before Feng Wu replied, Chaoga retorted, you people are all idiots. Xiao Wu is first, so what? You're all just jealous. Ha ha ha. First. Feng Wu. Mu Yao Yao heard the noise and came up to them. She arrived just in time to hear what Duan Chaoga said and she cracked up. I'll give Feng Wu my head if she gets the highest score in the written exam. You mean it? Feng Wu spoke for the first time. She fixed her gaze on Mu Yao Yao with a tiny smile on her face. Mu Yao Yao was very confident about her source of information. She had searched from the first name to the last on that list which had come out of Imperial College earlier. And Feng Wu's name wasn't there. So, she smirked. Deal. I'll cut my head off if you're first in the written exam. Make it into a stool or a football all you want. But, if you're not. Putting her hands behind her back, Mu Yao Yao darted a contemptuous look at Feng Wu. Her voice turned cold. I'll cut your head off. Everyone's stomachs lurched. That was a big deal. Just then, Lady Wang and Feng Lu arrived at the scene. Feng Lu was going to join the fight, but Lady Wang stopped her with a shake of her head. Mu Yao Yao was challenging Feng Wu and that was great. Chaoga tugged at Feng Wu nervously. Qiuling and Feng Xiaoqi also looked at Feng Wu, both concerned. Sister, don't. Feng Xiaoqi tugged at Feng Wu's sleeve and shook his head repeatedly. Sister, her head isn't worth it. Yours is much more precious. Just ignore her. The onlookers guffawed. Mu Yao Yao was infuriated. Chapter 645, Was Feng Wu on the list? The boy said that her life wasn't as valuable as Feng Wu's. She was a princess and the daughter of Lord Mu. Feng Wu was nothing but a cripple. Mu Yao Yao smirked. Feng Wu, are you in or not? Feng Wu shook her head. Well, I don't mind the bet, but what if you deny it afterward? I swear upon this. Mu Yao Yao smacked a wooden token of the Mu Manor on the table. The servants had all gone off to see the list and Feng Wu and the others were all waiting in a teahouse now. I, Mu Yao Yao, swear upon the honor of the Mu Manor. If I lose the bet and won't acknowledge it, my father will lose his title. Everyone here is witness. Mu Yao Yao glared at Feng Wu in a provoking manner. She wanted to kill Feng Wu right now. If Feng Wu took the bet, Mu Yao Yao would cut her head off later without hesitation. Witnesses aren't enough, said Feng Wu. Let's put it on paper. No problem. Mu Yao Yao was thrilled to hear that. You want it written down? You got it. Mu Yao Yao had someone fetch her a pen and paper and she sat down to write. She finished in no time. Mu Yao Yao then handed the agreement to Feng Wu. Deal? After making sure that Mu Yao Yao had written down everything she said, Feng Wu nodded. The agreement was done in duplicate and everyone here was witness. Can we join in as well? Yi Yifei asked all of a sudden. Feng Wu glanced at Yi Yifei. What are your terms? I'm not betting with you, your life is Princess Mu's already. I want Duan Chaoga. Yi Yifei still held a grudge against Duan Chaoga and she smirked. I'll destroy my cultivation achievements myself if Duan Chaoga gets into Imperial College this time. If she doesn't, she'll have to destroy hers. I'm betting against Duan Chaoga, too. Duan Chaoyin snorted. I'll do everything she asks if she gets in. Otherwise, she'll be my slave. You would like that, wouldn't you? Bring it on. Chaoga sneered. I'll take the bet. Just then, the results are out. The results are out. Mu Yao Yao's servant ran back to her in a hurry. Zhao Liang, how did I do? Mu Yao Yao asked in a confident voice. She had seen the earlier version of the list and was very sure of herself. Princess, you're 98th. Zhao Liang said cheerfully. Princess, with that score, you'll be in the best class. The ranking wasn't the same as what Mu Yao Yao had read, but it was similar enough, which convinced her further. She kept her eyes on Feng Wu as she asked Zhao Liang the second question. So, Did you see this Miss Feng Wu's name on that list? Mu Yaoyao's voice was full of sarcasm and contempt. Only the top 1,000 candidates' names were on that list and Feng Wu wasn't one of them. Hence, she would have Feng Wu's head today. Mu Yaoyao began to draw a dagger out of her sleeve. The sharp blade glinted in the sunlight. All eyes were on Zhao Liang. And they were waiting for him to say no. However, everyone was disappointed. Yes. Zhao Liang said affirmatively. Chapter 646, Who's First? What? Shocked, Mu Yaoyao's hand jolted and the sharp blade nicked her fingertip. But she couldn't care less about that. Glaring at Zhao Liang, she bellowed, "What did you say?" Ha! Frightened by Mu Yaoyao's bellow, Zhao Liang looked at his master in bewilderment. What did you say? Say it again. Is Feng Wu on that list? Mu Yaoyao approached Zhao Liang with the dagger in her hand. Zhao Liang was terrified. He had no idea what he had done wrong. He was only telling the truth. Why, yes. Miss Feng Wu's name really is on that list, and it's the first name in the top row. Her name is bigger than anyone else's, with thicker strokes. Everyone has seen it. Mu Yaoyao almost had a stroke. Everyone else stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. The first name in the first row. In bigger writing than the others. And in thicker strokes. What did that mean? Isn't that only for the top candidate? Yi Yifei was still trying to digest the information. Wait, Feng Wu got the highest score? You've got to be kidding me. She's the least possible candidate. I bet Princess Mu's servant doesn't know what he's talking about. I don't believe it. Everyone was whispering at the same time. As the center of attention, Feng Wu only stood there with a calm smile on her face. She didn't seem disturbed at all. Tell me again. What's Feng Wu's ranking? Mu Yaoyao pointed her dagger at Zhao Liang. First, Zhao Liang was almost in tears. He was only telling the truth. Why was the princess acting like a crazy person? How could Mu Yaoyao not be? She had just made a very heavy bet. Ha ha ha. No way. I don't believe it. Feng Wu can't be first. She just can't. I won't believe it even if you kill me. Mu Yaoyao guffawed. She had seen the list and Feng Wu wasn't even in the top 1,000. Just then. Yi Yifei's servant came back in a hurry. Miss. Yi Yifei cut him off in a loud voice. Hold it. Just tell me who's first. Yi Gui, Yi Yifei's servant, blurted out, Feng Wu. The first is Feng Wu, as in, the phoenix soars above the land. It's quite a catchy name. Yi Yifei was rendered speechless. So was everyone else. No, Mu Yaoyao felt as if she had just been struck by a thunderbolt and her head was spinning. No, no, no. I don't believe it. I don't. She squeezed into the crowd like a wild animal. And she was still holding that dagger. The blade was very sharp and it could cut through anything. With the dagger in Mu Yaoyao's hand as she howled like a mad person, no one wanted to stand in her way. Hence, she managed to make her way through the crowd rather smoothly. As Mu Yaoyao rushed off to see the list, many began to study Feng Wu. The looks they gave her were a mix of suspicion, uneasiness, and bewilderment. Feng Wu passed the written exam. And got the highest score. No, it couldn't be. Something had to be wrong. Just then, Duan Qiaoying's maid came back as well, panting as she ran. Miss, I've seen the results. Everyone turned to her. Hold on. Tell us now, who's first? Chapter 647, The Mysterious Man. Xiao Wan, the maid, was a timid girl. She was shaken by all the eyes on her. Feng Wu. She gave the answer. And everyone was shocked again. It was Feng Wu. It was Feng Wu. It was Feng Wu. If only one person gave that answer, they might be lying, but these people had given the same answer repeatedly. Could all of them be lying? Just then, someone shouted at the crowd gathering around the list, "Hey, who's first on that list?" And the crowd shouted back in unison, "Feng, Wu." The sound resonated in the air. To say that Yi Yifei had drained of all color would be an understatement. And the same went for Duan Chaoyin and Duan Chaoyue. These people all stared at Feng Wu as if they had seen a ghost. How could this be? How? Why Feng Wu? They couldn't imagine how this could have happened. It was incredible. Meanwhile, Mu Yaoyao had arrived at the foot of the bulletin board where the list was posted. After pushing through the crowd, her hair was unkempt, her clothes disheveled, and her face contorted. She stared at the first name in the first row of the list. The name was written in thick strokes. And bigger than the other names. It was Feng Wu. It was Feng Wu. It was Feng Wu. No matter how many times she rubbed her eyes, the name didn't change. She hadn't read it wrong. It was indeed Feng Wu. Feng Wu was first. No. Mu Yaoyao spat out a mouthful of blood onto the list. And the bright yellow paper was painted red. Everyone else failed to recognize her and they cried out in surprise. Who's the nutjob? Some loony who failed the exam, I think. Everyone can take the exam up to 3 times, no? Try again. Mu Yaoyao could barely stand still. Feng Wu was first, she was first. Her head spun and Mu Yaoyao almost fainted. Princess. Her servants rushed to her side in a hurry to stop her from falling. The others were shocked by her reaction. Who's that? Isn't she the princess of the Mu Manor? Princess Mu Yaoyao. But she's on that list. 98th, isn't it? What's with her anger? You missed the show. Princess Mu made a bet with Feng Wu. Really? On what? On whether or not Feng Wu could get in. Feng Wu. The Feng Wu. Of course she can't. Bah! Are you blind? Look! The first name on the list. Holy shit! Feng Wu. That's Feng Wu. You don't say. Princess Mu bet her own head, and she's in a lot of trouble now. Is she going to die now? Is it really Feng Wu? Could it be a mistake or something? Maybe it's a different person with the same name. A different person? Yes. That was possible. Mu Yaoyao, who almost had a nervous breakdown, saw hope again. However, you idiot. A different person? The names come with their serial numbers, okay? Feng Wu entered the exam on recommendation and her serial number is very unique. It's 10,001. Look, it's her name and her serial number. Mu Yaoyao blanched. Meanwhile, a few steps away. Chapter 648, Your Majesty. It was an old man wearing a skullcap and a casual outfit, but his eyes looked exceptionally sagacious. Behind him was an elderly steward, who was bent respectfully toward his master. If one looked closely, they would spot quite a few capable cultivators, who were scanning the perimeter with their piercing eyes. They were scattered among the crowd and looking in different directions, but they always kept an eye on the wise-looking old man. The old man himself was rather relaxed and even tried to strike up a conversation with those around him. He asked curiously, did this Princess Mu really bet her own life? The onlooker he asked was the gossipy type, who pulled the old man a little further away from the crowd before whispering in an excited voice, "Oh yeah, she did. They put it down on paper." The sagacious old man looked intrigued. "Did they?" "Sir, you've asked the right person. I witnessed the whole thing. Here's what happened. Princess Mu here provoked Miss Feng Wu first, saying that she would cut her whole head off and give it to Miss Feng Wu as a football if Miss Feng Wu could make it onto the list this time." "Oh my," the old man cried out in surprise. "That's right." Miss Feng Wu didn't respond at first, but Princess Mu wouldn't let it drop. She practically forced Miss Feng Wu to say yes. What was more, Princess Mu Yaoyao even made a solemn oath, saying that if she refused to acknowledge the bet afterward, her father would lose his title. The old man sounded shocked. Seriously? The chief steward looked up at the sky in resignation. Isn't it a little inappropriate to gossip like this, Your Majesty? Naturally, the onlooker had no idea that he was talking to the emperor, and he went on in high spirits. Yes, seriously. Princess Mu just dug her own grave, if you ask me. I'm looking forward to seeing her cut her own head off, ha 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 ha. Well, I'm off. They're going back to the tea house and I need to get there before the front row seats are taken. Which tea house? Why, you want to go, too? Come with me, then. It's just over there. Taking His Majesty's hand, the onlooker dragged the emperor through the crowd. Speechless, the chief steward watched as his emperor marched cheerfully into the crowd. Guards of the Secret Service narrowed their eyes in a threatening manner. With one sweep of their hands, this ignorant onlooker wouldn't know what killed him. They gave the chief steward inquiring looks. The chief steward shook his head. The best seats had been taken when Emperor Wu got there and they could only stand in the second row. By then, everyone had learned that Feng Wu had gotten the highest score in the written exam. It wasn't another person with the same name, and she was unmistakably first. Throwing off the servants supporting her, Mu Yaoyao rushed up to Feng Wu with eyes that could spit fire. She ranted, "Feng Wu! You cheated!" All eyes were on Feng Wu after those words. So, she was able to get such good grades because she cheated in the exam? Hidden among the commoners in his skullcap and casual outfit, the emperor looked at Mu Yaoyao in disappointment. He recalled that it was only the other day that the Empress had recommended this girl to him, praising the girl for how comely, docile, and well-behaved she was, so that the crown prince could consider the girl as a future imperial concubine. Chapter 649, More Face-Slapping. Seeing Mu Yaoyao with her unkempt hair, pale face, and frantic manner, Emperor Wu thought about his extraordinary son, and was furious. How dare his wife try to use such a woman to defile his linyuan? The idea was abominable. However, Mu Yaoyao had no idea that His Majesty himself was in the crowd, nor did she know that she had had a chance of marrying Jun Linyuan. Right now, she just wanted to do as she pleased. She pointed at Feng Wu. Cheater! You're a cheater! Feng Wu smiled. Princess Mu, everyone has to take responsibility for what they say and do. You can't take back your words. You know that, right? Now, Princess Mu, please tell everyone when I cheated. How did I do it? And where is your evidence? Feng Wu narrowed her eyes and her gaze was as sharp as a cold blade. Under her intimidating stare, Mu Yaoyao cringed and stumbled back. She yelled, You just cheated. Answer my question. Feng Wu was still smiling. Of course Mu Yaoyao had no evidence. She was only giving vent to her frustration. Tell everyone this, were we in the same examination hall? Feng Wu smirked. Yes. And His Royal Highness and Mr. Liu were in the hall with us. Yes. So, you're telling me that someone could cheat in the exam with both His Royal Highness and Mr. Liu as invigilators? Is that possible? Of course not. Mu Yaoyao answered involuntarily. And you're still insisting that I cheated? Mu Yaoyao stammered. I mean that it happened after we handed in the exam papers. Really? Princess Mu, you're so well connected. Common candidates like me have no idea what happens after our exam papers are handed in, but you actually have access to someone inside. Mu Yaoyao was speechless. As Feng Wu pressed on, Mu Yaoyao fell back and was on the verge of breaking down. I have no such access. I just heard people talking. Really? What did you hear, then? You heard about me cheating on the exam? Well, they showed me a list before and you weren't on it. A previous list? Feng Wu smiled. Did Imperial College come up with a list before the official announcement? Who gave you that? Mr. Zhua? Yes. It was Mr. Zhua. Mu Yaoyao tried to intimidate Feng Wu with Mr. Zhua's name. She tossed a piece of paper at Feng Wu. See? You're not on this list. Your name was added afterward. You cheated. Emperor Wu snorted. Zhua he. It was so audacious of him to leak such information. Your Majesty. The chief steward was waiting for further instructions. Emperor Wu nodded. Hence, in less than a minute. Someone cried out in the crowd. Someone's coming out from Imperial College. Look! They're putting up something else. Mu Yaoyao rejoiced. Holy shit! Was Imperial College disqualifying Feng Wu because she called her a cheater just then? However, Mu Yaoyao almost fainted when someone began to read the new announcement aloud. It was very succinct. Zhua he was dismissed from his job for gross misconduct and for harming a student during the 3 days he served as the acting principal of Imperial College. He had been removed from his office as a member of the education board and was sentenced to life imprisonment. Chapter 650, You're hounding me to death. Mu Yaoyao was speechless. And everyone was taken by surprise. Mr. Zhua? Gross misconduct? What kind of misconduct? And which student had he harmed? Shortly after the new announcement was posted, someone came out of Imperial College to put up a new post. That's an exam paper. Imperial College is putting up someone's exam paper. Look! It's serial number 10001 and the name says Feng Wu. It's Feng Wu's paper. Holy shit! Look at her handwriting. She deserves to get full marks for that handwriting alone. Oh God! Look at her answers. They're excellent. The memorization questions aren't that big a surprise, but she got all the multiple choice questions right. And there's section 4. I never knew that cracking ground can be used in that way. She's got remarkable knowledge of formations and medicine refinement as well. Yes. I see it now. I know what happened. The onlooker, who had been talking to Emperor Wu, tugged at the latter's sleeve in excitement. What do you see? Emperor Wu asked with a half-smile. Didn't you hear? According to Princess Mu, she read the list Mr. Zhua circulated earlier and Feng Wu wasn't on it. Feng Wu didn't have a lower ranking, but had been excluded from the top 1,000. She had been removed from the competition completely. Emperor Wu nodded. The onlooker was greatly excited by his realization. But they've just put up Feng Wu's exam paper. With His Royal Highness and Mr. Liu as the invigilators, there's no way Feng Wu could have cheated, right? Emperor Wu said, of course not. This is it, then. This is proof of Feng Wu's true capability. She got full marks and no one can question a thing. But she didn't even get into the first 1,000 in Mr. Zhua's list. That malpractice was Mr. Zhua's doing. He harmed a student and was removed from his post for misconduct. That was what he did. The others around them were enlightened. You're so right. That makes sense. We were wondering just then. Who knew Mr. Zhua could do such a thing? That Zhua family is unbelievable. A few steps away, the people from the Zhua family lowered their heads and quietly left the scene. No one would have connected Mr. Zhua's misconduct with his disciplinary fraud in the exam, but after what Mu Yaoyao did, everyone now knew what the Zhua family had been up to. It was all thanks to Princess Mu and the Mu Manor. Meanwhile, Mu Yaoyao stood there, dazed. She hadn't seen that new announcement coming at all. Crossing her arms, Feng Wu grinned at Mu Yaoyao. See that? What do you want? Mu Yaoyao glared at Feng Wu. Nothing, really. Feng Wu shrugged. I'm wondering when are you going to honor our bet? Mu Yaoyao was speechless. All eyes were on Mu Yaoyao now. Would she keep her promise? Mu Yaoyao kept her gaze on Feng Wu. You want me dead, then? Feng Wu shrugged again. Princess Mu, you forced me to take the bet and I'm the bad guy now. Luckily, everyone here is a witness, or you might actually pin the thing on me. So? Feng Wu waved the agreement at her. Princess Mu, when do I get to play with your head as a football? You! Mu Yaoyao had never felt this humiliated before. Everyone was looking at her as if she was a clown, and the looks they gave her were full of contempt and ridicule. You're hounding me to death here. Mu Yaoyao pointed at the crowd. You, and you lot. You're all in so much trouble. Chapter 651, Face Slapping continued. Princess Mu promptly turned to leave after blurting out those words. She left, just like that. Everyone stared at Mu Yaoyao. What about her bet? She had bet her own head. Had she forgotten about it? Hey, Princess Mu, what about that head? Princess Mu, you're supposed to cut your head off, right? Princess Mu, we won't stop you, but you've got to leave your head behind. Ha ha ha. In her exasperation, Mu Yaoyao had insulted everyone and the crowd turned against her. Mu Yaoyao stumbled and almost lost her footing. She was only able to stop from falling because someone in the crowd steadied her. Humph. Cheeks flushed, Mu Yaoyao ran away as fast as she could. The crowd sneered in contempt. Princess Mu didn't even try to keep her promise. That's right. She really didn't behave like a princess at all, running off like that. She didn't just run off. She accused us of wanting her dead. What did we do? She did it to herself. If she has the courage to apologize to Miss Feng for what she said, I'll respect her a lot for it. But what she did was just so disgraceful. Are all princesses nowadays like this? Everyone was talking at the same time. Just when they all thought that Mu Yaoyao had run off from the humiliation, she doubled back shortly afterward. She came back. Look! Princess Mu is back. Is she going to apologize to Miss Feng? Instantly, all eyes were on Mu Yaoyao. She rushed to Feng Wu's side, snorted, then grabbed Yi Yafei by the wrist. Didn't you make a bet with Duan Chaoga just then? Why, yes, Yi Yafei was still in shock. And you, too, right? Mu Yaoyao glared at Duan Chaoyin. Duan Chaoyin said, why, yes. Good. Mu Yaoyao sneered at Feng Wu. Wasn't Duan Chaoga going to destroy her own cultivation if she lost the bet? Well, I'll keep my promise if she keeps hers. The idea came to Mu Yaoyao just then and she thought it was the only way to turn things around. Wasn't Feng Wu forcing her to keep her promise to cut her head off? Fine. That Duan Chaoga that Feng Wu was so protective of was going to lose. Make her keep her promise now. Why are you asking me to keep my promise when Duan Chaoga won't? That's just double standards. Mu Yaoyao said in a righteous tone. Duan Chaoga? Everyone turned to look at Duan Chaoga. The confrontation between Feng Wu and Mu Yaoyao was so eye-catching that everyone had forgotten about the bet Duan Chaoga had made with Duan Chaoyin and Yi Yafei. So, if Chaoga keeps her word, you'll keep yours? Feng Wu smiled. Naturally. Mu Yaoyao stuck out her chest and spoke in a confident voice, her eyes shining. What they said was right. She couldn't leave this place like a defeated dog. It would be such a blow for the Mu manor. But, Chaoga did get in. Feng Wu shrugged. Although she hadn't checked the list, Feng Wu had helped Chaoga cheat in the exam and she knew exactly how many marks Chaoga had gotten. Ha ha ha. Chapter 652, The Face Slapping Hasn't Stopped. Duan Chaoyin, who had kept her silence, finally laughed out loud. She said to Feng Wu, Miss Feng Wu, you can have as much confidence in yourself as you want, but as for Duan Chaoga, I'm afraid you've made the wrong judgment. Really? Feng Wu raised an eyebrow. Duan Chaoga is my younger sister from a different mother and I know her better than anyone else. All she could write down on that paper was her name. Pass the written exam? That's never going to happen. Yi Yifei chuckled as well. I'll be a royal princess before Duan Chaoga passes the written exam. Duan Chaoyin added, I'll be the Empress if she passes. In the crowd, Emperor Wu's face darkened. But the two girls weren't aware of it. Seeing the look on His Majesty's face, the chief steward knew that he was offended. The chief steward said a silent prayer for the heads of the Duan and Yi clans. Miss, Duan Chaoyin's maid tugged her sleeve. Miss, passed, the maid tried to drop a hint. Duan Chaoyin arrogantly said, I know I passed. Xiao Wu was almost in tears. Miss, your sister passed. What? Those words rumbled like thunder in Duan Chaoyin's ears. After all, only a handful of people had been able to see the list that Mr. Zhou had leaked. Mu Yao was one of them, but her servants were so considerate that they had crossed out Duan Chaoga's name in advance, so as not to upset their master. Hence, Mu Yao missed Duan Chaoga's name. Hence, everyone turned to look at Duan Chaoga now. The onlookers were all eager for more gossip and people started yelling immediately. Duan Chaoga? She's on the list. She didn't pass. Says who? She's the second name on the list and it's written in bold strokes, too. Why did Princess Mu think that Duan Chaoga failed? Is she blind or something? And those two girls, why are they still talking nonsense? The crowd looked at Mu Yao, Duan Chaoyin, and Yi Yifei as if they were clowns. The three girls looked at one another in bewilderment before turning to their servants. Miss, Xiao Wu was almost in tears. Duan Chaoga is second. Mu Yao spat out a mouthful of blood. But Duan Chaoyin was the most astonished. After living under the same roof for so many years, she knew perfectly well what Duan Chaoga was like. That girl was hopeless when it came to exams. But she got the second highest score. Just behind Feng Wu. No. That's impossible. I won't believe it. There's no way Duan Chaoga is second. She knows nothing. She can't even get into the first 2,000, let alone be second. However, the others only snorted at her in return. Duan Chaoga really is second in the written exam. Everyone gave her that answer. Wait, is she Duan Chaoyin? I think so. Her maid called her Miss, didn't she? Why didn't I see her name up there? I think I did. There, in the last 100. Isn't that Duan Chaoyin? No. That's Duan Chaoyue. There's no Duan Chaoyin on the list. Duan Chaoyin was dumbfounded when she heard that. What the hell? Chapter 653, A Sudden Turn of Events. She had yet to recover from the shock of Duan Chaoga getting the second highest score when she learned that she herself hadn't gotten in. She couldn't believe it. Duan Chaoyin turned to stare at Xiao Wu. Xiao Wu almost burst into tears, but she still said, Miss, your name really isn't on the list. Duan Chaoyin couldn't take the blow and almost fainted. Miss, your name isn't on the list, but your sister's is. Xiao Wu really shouldn't have mentioned that. Duan Chaoyin spat out a mouthful of blood as soon as she heard it. Miss. Duan Chaoyin passed out from anger. The crowd was speechless. In the crowd, Emperor Wu shook his head at Duan Chaoyin, who had fainted from anger. That girl needs to work on her tolerance. Which family is she from? Her father is Duan Hongyi, a fourth-ranked official, the chief steward whispered in Emperor Wu's ear. Emperor Wu recalled the person at the reminder. He shook his head. Duan Hongyi is a decent government official, but he's not as good when it comes to raising his children. This daughter of his isn't presentable at all. The chief steward said another silent prayer, this time for Master Duan. But that Duan Chaoga is a nice girl. Is she Duan Hongyi's daughter, too? Yes, because of Feng Wu, the chief steward had been keeping an eye on Duan Chaoga as well. Miss Duan Chaoga is Duan Hongyi's third daughter, but her mother is a concubine and her family bullies her. Emperor Wu frowned. Duan Hongyi is such a poor judge of character. The chief steward felt even more sorry for this Master Duan now. His Majesty had just criticized him on his judgment of character. A fourth-ranked official was probably the highest Duan Hongyi was ever going to go. With Mu Yaoyao and Duan Chaoyin spitting out blood, Yi Yifei was the only one on her feet, but she didn't look any better. Yi Yifei, right? Feng Wu glanced at her. Feng Wu. What do you want from me? Feng Wu smiled. Those two passed out from fear and they can wait, but what did you say just then? You'll cut an arm off if Chaoga gets in. But. Yi Yifei read the agreement about her bet and her eyes lit up all of a sudden. She shouted, but. You've only just passed the written exam. There's still the physical tryout to go. I'll cut my arm off if you pass that and get into Imperial College. Feng Wu frowned. Yi Yifei was thrilled as she pointed at the words on the agreement. Look. It says, get into Imperial College, not pass the written exam. Ha ha ha, the bet is about getting accepted into Imperial College. Feng Wu darted a look at her agreement and saw that it was indeed the case. She hadn't noticed it when the agreement was drafted, for to her understanding, passing the written exam wasn't that different from getting into Imperial College. Mu Yaoyao and Duan Chaoyin had passed out. Of course, they were only pretending to have passed out. For if they didn't do that, Feng Wu would ask them to honor their bets. But Yi Yifei's words gave them some hope. Well, it gave them a lot more than some hope. Mu Yaoyao jumped to her feet. She stared at Feng Wu with a malicious smile on her face. Feng Wu. The bet we made was for you to get into Imperial College, not pass the written exam. At least, that was what was written in the agreement. Chapter 654, You Like Her? Duan Chaoyin also swiftly rose to her feet and glanced at Feng Wu arrogantly. Our bet is also about getting into Imperial College, not passing the written exam. The crowd was dumbfounded. No one had expected such a turn of events. The wording of an agreement was so important. The onlooker next to Emperor Wu frowned. Emperor Wu found the teenager rather amusing. What's with the long face? Well, there's something you should know. The teenager smiled bitterly. Feng Wu is a special case. Really? Emperor Wu raised an eyebrow, pretending not to know anything. The teenager sighed. Miss Feng Wu used to be this super genius girl, but she got unlucky, and somehow, she was crippled. She's just an ordinary person with no spiritual essence now. Here's the thing. Without spiritual essence, although she can still learn the theory, she'll be hopeless in actual combat. Miss Feng Wu is crippled physically, but it hasn't affected how smart she is. Yes. So, she was able to get the highest score in the written exam and got full marks. That's an unprecedented record. You're right. But she's lost her cultivation ability. I checked just then and I found out that she has no spiritual essence whatsoever. How is she going to get through the physical tryout? How is she going to get into Imperial College? The written exam only takes up 300 of the 1,000 points, and the physical tryout takes up 700. The teenager was genuinely concerned for Feng Wu and he went on sighing. If Miss Feng Wu loses, they'll take her head. Seeing how indignant the teenager felt, Emperor Wu was amused. You're on Feng Wu's side, then? Of course. You know her? This is my first time seeing her. Then why are you taking her side? Because she's beautiful. The teenager gave Emperor Wu a look, as if he was looking at an idiot. Don't you think so? Emperor Wu was speechless. He couldn't say no to that question. Moreover, don't you think that there's something about her that makes you want to like her? She just feels so comfortable to be around. The teenager tried to explain his feelings. Emperor Wu frowned. You like her? Who wouldn't like such a pretty girl? The teenager darted a bewildered look at Emperor Wu. Ahem, the chief steward cleared his throat. This teenager should really shut up now. Emperor Wu threw a dirty look at the chief steward, then turned back to the teenager. Don't you think she attracts too much attention from guys? Are you even listening to yourself? The teenager almost jumped to his feet. Sir, that's so inappropriate. Have you heard the expression, the flower will bloom with or without the wind? That's Miss Feng Wu. She's the flower, and the butterflies willingly fly toward her. Emperor Wu didn't know what to say. The teenager snorted. I heard that His Royal Highness cancelled his engagement to Miss Feng Wu. If you ask me, His Royal Highness might always be right, but not this time. Emperor Wu asked, really? How so? Look, Miss Feng Wu scored full marks in the exam. No one has ever been able to do that. She's like, crazy smart. With her intelligence and the crown prince's talents, I bet they'd make the cleverest babies in history. It would be such a blessing to the empire. Sigh, what a pity.